After 26 successful rescue. Watching the pirates approaching in such a cooperative manner, Kaito smiled for the first time after landing on the island, but if other people saw it, they would probably think that this smile was a little hideous. He stood still and formed seals with his hands quickly. Water style, water shuriken. Kaito stepped suddenly with one foot towards a puddle on the ground, and instantly a large amount of water splashed around him. As the seal was completed, the water splashes immediately began to gather into a stream at more than 20 points. In the blink of an eye, all the water splashes around Kaito disappeared, and turned into more than 20 water shurikens slightly larger than ordinary shurikens that were spinning at high speed in the air. Kaito put his hands together, and instantly all the water shurikens flew through the air with splashes of water, spinning towards the pirates who were attacking from all directions. Puff puff. The sound of sharp weapons hitting flesh could be heard continuously. Faced with such a large-scale ninjutsu attack, the pirates rushing in the front were instantly hit by several water shurikens and fell to the ground. Many of the pirates running behind were also cut by the high-speed rotating blades and suffered multiple injuries. Seeing such results, Kaito was quite satisfied with his new method of using the water shuriken. Before, because a single water shuriken was easier to control and more powerful, Kaito would usually only create one water shuriken and continue to add more chakra. However, thanks to the continuous improvement in medical ninjutsu, chakra control has also improved, which allows the water shuriken to be used in group attacks. On the other side, seeing that the battle was coming to an end, Zabuza, who had already lifted the hidden misjutsu, just happened to see Kaito displaying his powerful ninjutsu. He also raised his hands, ready to form seals and use the water dragon jutsu to harvest. However, when he saw the few remaining pirates and the child not far away, he simply gave up the idea, drew the short sword from his back again, and rushed forward with Blue. Among them, the short-statured Blue used quick attack first and passed by several pirates in the blink of an eye. Blue's figure is like a blue phantom, and he will only appear when he rushes to the enemy's feet. This moment of pause is often accompanied by Blue stretching out his little hand and slapping the pirates on their calves. The crisp sounds of breaking bones rang out one after another, and the pirates fell to the ground wailing in pain, holding their broken legs. But they should be considered lucky. If Zabuza had rushed up first, they probably wouldn't even have the chance to wail. On the other side, after dealing with the pirates who were heading to the landslide, Mei also quickly rushed over. When she arrived, she saw Zabuza pulling the short sword out of the heart of the last pirate still standing. It's over. Well, I still overestimated the combat effectiveness of these pirates. Kaito knocked out a pirate who was still wailing and covering his broken leg, while answering Mei. Upon hearing this, Mei did not refute anything, but walked forward and kicked an injured pirate hard, knocking him unconscious. Zabuza also turned around at this time, holding his short sword as if ready to end the pirate's life. Don't kill all of them. Leave a few alive. Kaito hurriedly spoke out to stop them. Zabuza glanced at Kaito with a somewhat cold look, neither speaking nor putting down his short sword. Faintly, there seemed to be a flash of purple aura on his body. Maybe I am dazzled. Seeing that Zabuza seemed to be in a bad state, Kaito didn't pay attention to his look and still started to explain. We haven't confirmed yet whether the target child is in the camp. Maybe the pirates haven't returned since they looted the Ringo village. And don't forget those two ANBU. We may need to get information. Kaito is right. Let's knock out the surviving pirates first. Mei also agreed. Okay. Zabuza's eyes returned to normal and he silently put away his short sword. However, although the three of them are not planning to kill all the pirates for the time being, they obviously will not treat the prisoners well or anything. Those pirates whose injuries were not fatal were simply walked over and kicked unconscious, while those with more serious injuries were simply helped to relieve their pain. While the three were dealing with the pirates, the captured children noticed that the battle here was over. The incident happened suddenly and most of the cages were not closed, but the fighting never stopped, so no children came out. At this moment, some children are still peeking around to see what's going on here, while some braver ones have already come out. It's over. We are here to rescue you. Seeing these children, the oldest of whom were only 7 or 8 years old and the youngest of whom were only 4 or 5 years old, Mei spoke particularly gently. Perhaps it was because the three of them were only a few years older than the other children, and more children began to walk out of the cages. One of the older kids bravely walked up to the three of them and asked, "Excuse me, are you ninja-sama?" "We are ninjas from the Kirigakure village. We have been tasked with rescuing children that were kidnapped by pirates." Although the mission was only to rescue the 7 children in Ringo village, Kaito would naturally not say such a depressing thing at this time. As a result, Zabuza on the side asked directly with some impatience, "Are any of you kidnapped from Ringo village?" "Ah. I'm from Ringo village." Although he was frightened by Zabuza, the youngest boy who came over still spoke up and answered, "Are all 7 of you here?" May asked immediately. "Ah, several children from our village were just captured, and only one child was taken away." The boy looked a little sad when he said this. Kaito suddenly thought of the red-haired kid who was knocked unconscious in the house by him before, and turned to May and said, "May, tell these kids about the situation. I'll go search these houses to see if there's any information or any fish that slipped through the net. I'll go too." As if he was not very good at dealing with these children younger than himself, Zabuza turned and walked towards the other side of the house. When Kaito finished searching all the houses and returned to the center of the camp carrying the red-haired child on his back, May and Zabuza had gathered all the living children together and were giving simple bandages to a few injured children. Seeing this, Kaito walked over and took over the treatment, while telling his search results. "There's only one child like this, and there's no intelligence letter. Let's let the children of Ringo village identify this child." "I didn't find anything here either," Zabuza said casually after hearing this. Fortunately, after confirmation, the red-haired child was indeed captured from Ringo village, and the team's mission objectives were found. And after the brief communication with these children just now, May also learned some general information. Chapter 27 Bad Luck. They heard this from several older children. Not only the 7 children in Ringo village, but all the other children were abducted by pirates from some remote villages nearby. The so-called camp here is not a training ground, it is just a transit point. The pirates would usually only teach these captured children some simple fighting skills and then let them fight each other. Those who perform well will have the opportunity to survive and eventually be sent to other places by ship. These children only knew that the people who were taken away were going to serve the nobles, but they had no idea where they were taken or who they were going to serve. As for the red-haired child, she behaved well but hid food in the hope of escaping. She was eventually discovered by pirates and locked up alone, and everyone else thought she was dead. The more he listened to the information May told him, the more Kaito's heart sank. It's just a C-rank mission, why is it so complicated? This seemingly ambiguous style of the Umbu, could it be that the erratic Kirigakure also has its own roots? Could it be that we had breached the talent base of some shady organization? As if she noticed the worry in Kaito's expression, May patted his shoulder generously and spoke. "These are things that Ao-sensei needs to worry about. Let's check the ships in the harbor and wait for Ao-sensei to come back. This is indeed an important matter." Team Ao had never thought that there would be so many kidnapped children. The small fishing boat left by Dazu could not accommodate so many people. Fortunately, there were several small boats anchored in the pirate port. Kaito suppressed his anxiety, stood up and walked over with May. And at this moment, Ao is being expected by his team members. Sensing the speedboat moving at high speed hundreds of meters away on the sea, Ao poked his head out from the water with a bit of suffocation. Ao thought that with his perception and tracking skills, he would be able to quickly catch up with the 2 ninjas who were suspected to be fake Umbu. It would be best if he could communicate directly and get proof of the other party's identity as an Umbu member. But Ao believes more in his own judgment that the other party is most likely an imposter. Then according to Kaito's guess, he might know the female Jonin, and he would be able to confirm her identity through a fight. However, who would have thought that the 2 people seemed to have known that someone was following them? Just when Ao was about to catch up with the other party, the 2 of them actually got on a small boat on a hidden shore and used water style to speed up and leave the island. Considering the war is approaching, the matter of someone impersonating the ANBU could be a big deal. And his 3 subordinates should have no problem dealing with some ordinary pirates. Ao decided to continue tracking the 2 people. However, it is always inconvenient to track by diving in the sea using water-style ninjutsu, and the opponent's ship is also accelerating continuously using water-style ninjutsu. At this time, the speedboat was finally about to leave Ao's perception range. Let's not talk about how Ao, whose pursuit was fruitless, will return. After checking the small boat in the port and confirming it was intact, Kaito and the other two found some supplies stored by the pirates and began distributing food to the children. This is the time when the excellent handling ability of Mei, a genin with a full year of experience, can be demonstrated. It seems that Mei, at such a young age, can manage these messy kids in an orderly manner. And she soothed the children's emotions with a gentle tone that was completely different from before. This made Kaito, a guy with an adult soul, feel ashamed. This is nothing. I've done a D-rank mission before, playing a ninja game with a rich merchant's kid. That's called. As if it brought back some bad memories, Mei shuddered involuntarily. Upon hearing this, Kaito immediately thought of the series of outrageous actions of a certain money-style ninja in the original novel, and couldn't help but cast a sympathetic look at Mei. Put away that weird look of yours. Seeing Mei's expression, which was like a frightened kitten, Kaito decisively gave in and moved closer to Zabuza. Zabuza looked at the interaction between the two with disdain and continued to clean his short sword. But he seemed to have thought of something and looked up at the two again. After Ao-sensei comes back, will he let us continue to chase the pirate ships that are out? Mei thought for a moment before answering. Probably not. It's too difficult to find a pirate ship on the sea. That's why there are so many pirate groups composed of ordinary people around the land of water. Besides, we are on a rescue mission after all. We still have so many children to bring back. We can't just wait here for the pirates to come back so we can kill them. Oh. Zabuza seemed to be just asking casually. After hearing the answer, he just replied coldly and continued to wipe the short sword with his head down. But what Mei said makes sense. Previously, they woke up a few pirates. Although they were all small fry, they didn't know much more information than these children. But the three also learned that the pirate ship left the port again yesterday. Usually, it would stay out for at least 10 days and at most a month. It is indeed impossible for Team AO to stay here and wait for opportunities. They can only rush back to the village as soon as possible and report the situation here. Then the village may issue tasks and send other teams to deal with the remaining pirates. Oh, by the way, there is another piece of information. They learned from these pirates that their captain and vice-captain are extremely powerful and can control strong winds and so on. However, the three of them were dismissive of this. With the weak strength of these cannon fodder pirates, any random genin who could use wind style would probably be as powerful as they said. Even if Zabuza formed a seal and released his water dragon jutsu, the pirates would think that he was a powerful man who controlled the sea. Just when the three of them were bored and waiting for Ao to come back from investigation. The anticipation in Kaito's mind suddenly sent out a series of warnings. Although not in a hurry, he still subconsciously turned his head to look at the sea. Then his pupils dilated slightly and he muttered to himself. Why are they back at this time? In sight, a ship with a black sail was slowly heading towards the island. It was the pirate ship that the three had just discussed. What? Zabuza, who was standing by, heard Kaito mumbling something and asked. Kaito quickly stood up and motioned his two teammates to look over. That pirate ship is back. Let these kids find a house to hide in first. Fortunately, thanks to Kaito's early discovery, the pirate ship was still quite far away from the island. The three of them immediately directed the children, who did not yet understand what was happening, to hide in several houses far from the coast. Seeing that the children were all hidden, the three of them leaned over behind a wooden house at the back of the harbor and watched the pirate ship slowly approaching the island in the distance. Kaito was still somewhat confused. Didn't they say they left the island yesterday? Why are they back now? Instead, Zabuza on the side said in a sinister tone. That's just bad luck for them. Chapter 28 Sneak Attack. At this time, the sky was already turning white. Seeing that they were about to return to their home lair, most of the pirates on the ship relaxed a little. There was no other way. The original intention of this voyage was to rob a merchant ship, and the preliminary intelligence had already been obtained. Who would have thought that less than a day after setting sail, their captain seemed to have received some news and angrily ordered everyone to prepare to return. In front of the captain's long-accumulated power, all the pirates did their jobs honestly and no one wanted to provoke him at this time. Only now, when they were about to reach the shore, did the pirates become a little more unbridled. As the sailboat slowly entered the harbor, a pirate dropped a rope and shouted. Old York. The ships are all in the harbor, why aren't they coming out? Haha, this old guy must be slacking off again. I guess old York didn't expect us to come back so soon. The many pirates on the ship laughed and put down the planks, preparing to disembark. However, when a middle-aged man with a big beard and a tricorn hat walked out of the cabin with a gloomy face, everyone fell silent and shrank out of the way like quails. Captain, old York is probably slacking off again. I'll go call him now. The pirate, who had been smiling just now, immediately slid down the boat nimbly along the rope and ran towards the cabin at the harbor. At this time, another younger scarred man walked out of the cabin, ignored the pirates cowering on the side, looked at the big man standing on the side of the ship, and spoke. Obake, is the campsite a little too quiet today? The bearded middle-aged man called Sakana Obake did not turn around, but just snorted lightly and said. It's probably because of those two people, but still you should go and take a look. Otherwise, they will gossip about you to the master of the house again. The scarred man didn't say anything after hearing this and jumped directly from the boat to the shore. But just at this moment, the door of the small wooden house at the port slowly opened. An old man in shabby clothes walked out of the wooden house with an anxious look on his face. York, you. Before the first pirate to get off the boat could open his mouth to reprimand, a man and a woman, both wearing masks and dressed as ninjas, came out of the wooden house behind old York. Just when all the pirates were still a little surprised, the scarred man stepped forward quickly. Shonin, Suguni. Why are you here directly this time? The scarred man's voice became weaker as he spoke. The two masked people did not seem to pay attention to his words, and were still led by old York in front of them, approaching the pirate ship. The scarred man lowered his head slightly in embarrassment and made some room, but he had no intention of stopping the other party. However, the scarred man who lowered his head and retreated did not notice that old York, who was approaching him and the ship, had a strange smile on his face. Just then, a loud shout came from the pirate ship. Yukiba! Get out of the way! A moment ago, the scarred man named Yukiba was still looking down and daydreaming. When he heard his captain's shout, he subconsciously stepped back. However, he was still a little slow, as old York, who had approached him at some point, suddenly accelerated and rushed forward. Choke! All he saw was a flash of white light passing before his eyes. Yukiba had no time to pull out his weapon, so he could only quickly stretch out his arm to block the attack. Blood splattered everywhere in an instant, and Yukiba's forearm was actually cut off on the spot. Yukiba endured the pain of his broken arm and kicked old York away, while using the force to continue dodging backwards. However, the attack was not over yet. The two masked ninjas took out several shurikens and threw them at Yukiba at some point. Just when Yukiba thought he was doomed, a strong wind came and pushed Yukiba several meters away, and at the same time blew away all the shurikens that were flying towards him, allowing him to avoid the fatal blow. Only then did Yukiba see that after the kicked old York fell to the ground, a cloud of white smoke exploded with a pong sound, and then it turned into a bandaged boy without eyebrows. It was none other than Momochi Zabuza. It was not until this time that these ordinary pirates realized what was happening and immediately shouted loudly. Protect the vice captain. All this just happened in a flash. Many pirates were still wondering who the two people behind old York were, but in the blink of an eye, their own vice captain had been ambushed and injured. All the pirates on the ship jumped down one after another, drew their weapons and protected their captain. The captain Sakana Obake, who had just used the wind-style ninjutsu to save his companion, also flashed in front of Yukiba and stopped his bleeding. Seeing the pirates on the opposite side looking at the three of them with eager eyes, Zabuza rubbed his kicked chest and stood up from the ground and said coldly. He is a chunin at least. Zabuza didn't think that an ordinary genin could dodge his sneak attack, and judging from the strength of the opponent's subconscious counterattack, it was obvious that his taijutsu was not weak either. Pong x2. Two more puffs of smoke burst out, and Mei and Kaito also revealed their figures. Zabuza, your smile just now was too obvious. Kaito didn't feel sorry for Zabuza who was kicked. If this guy hadn't shown such a creepy smile before the sneak attack, he wouldn't have been discovered by the other opponent and warned. If you had just followed my instructions and attacked them before they even reached the shore, there wouldn't be so much trouble. When Zabuza discovered the pirate ship before, he wanted to use the water dragon jutsu to sink it before it reached the shore. However, Kaito took into consideration that if there were kidnapped civilians on the pirate ship, innocent people might be harmed. That's why the three of them finally decided to transform and launch a sneak attack, which also served as a good opportunity to test the relationship between the two ninjas and the pirates. But before taking action, the three of them had never thought that there was an opponent with the strength of a Chunin among the pirates. And that man is only the vice captain. After hearing the shouts of the pirate minions just now, Mei spoke to her two teammates in a serious tone. Kaito also looked over there, at Yukiba, who was protected by the pirates and the bearded captain who was bandaging him. Fortunately, we managed to cripple one of the enemy's combat capabilities. I hope that their captain is not a Jonin. Seeing that Zabuza was no longer seriously injured, Mei was not going to give them a chance to continue bandaging him and immediately gave the order. Kaito, you deal with the pirate minions. Zabuza will deal with the Chunin with a broken arm. I'll hold back the pirate captain. As the acting captain, although she is also good at using large-scale ninjutsu to deal with miscellaneous underline, Mei still took on the task of delaying the enemy's strongmen. She also believed that her two teammates could quickly deal with the opponent and come to help her. No need. I will deal with that guy together with you. Leave the small fry to Blue and Zabuza. Kaito hurriedly stopped Mei's impulsive decision. If he was really a Jonin, would Mei use her head to hold the other person back? He didn't want the future fifth Mizukage to fall here. Quack oh, Blue immediately patted his chest and accepted the order. Seeing this, Mei, who had already started to form hand seals, didn't say anything more, but just nodded slightly in agreement. Zabuza, who had been unable to hold back any longer, immediately drew a short sword from his back and rushed towards the pirates with Blue. After completing the hand seal, Mei tilted her head back and took a deep breath. Water Style, Water Wave Jutsu. End of this chapter. Chapter 29 Vacuum Blade. Mei opened her mouth slightly and a stream of water spurted out of her mouth. The water flow gradually expanded, and in an instant it turned into turbulent waves rushing towards the group of pirates. This time, Mei did not hold back at all. The water waves powered by her chakra knocked the group of pirates over. However, Water Style, Water Wave is only a C-rank ninjutsu after all, so it can't do anything to Obake and Yukiba. Both of them jumped up lightly and avoided the water waves. Fortunately, Mei's goal was only to disperse the opponent and divide the battlefield. This is to prevent herself and Kaito from having to guard against sneak attacks from the pirate minions while dealing with Obake. Seeing the enemies dispersed, Zabuza and Blue rushed towards Yukiba, who only had one arm left, and the pirate minions, who were still struggling to get up. Kaito and Mei immediately threw out several kunai and shurikens at Obake to distract and prevent him from rescuing other pirates. Obake didn't expect that these two little devils, about 10 years old, would dare to rush towards him like this. He snorted coldly, and without paying any attention to the other crew members, he drew the scimitar from his waist, ready to deal with the two little devils first. As Kaito was running, he saw the opponent pulling out a scimitar, and his brain started working fast. Just now, when the other party rescued his companion from a distance, he clearly used wind-style ninjutsu, so it is clear that he is not without ninjutsu ability. But now that he saw the two of us rushing forward like this, his first reaction was not to use ninjutsu to fight back, but to draw out a weapon like a scimitar. If he didn't simply look down on the two of us, then it might be that the other party is better at close combat. At that distance, with the speed of a Kenjutsu Jonin, he can just choose to rescue him directly. There is no need to use wind-style ninjutsu and let his teammates get hurt again. A Chunin who prefers Kenjutsu? No, that vice captain is a Chunin. So, an elite Chunin. We'll fight him. Although Kaito thought a lot in his mind, it was actually just a matter of a moment. While running, Kaito and Mei looked at each other and made hand gestures, forming a B formation. Mei immediately understood and stopped preparing the water-style, water formation wall jutsu. The two of them stopped rushing forward tacitly, and instantly separated to the sides, stepping on the water surface just created by Mei, surrounding Obake on the left and right. First, Kaito threw out a few more shurikens to interfere, and then formed seals with both hands at the same time, preparing for ninjutsu. Oh, you arrogant brat. Obake immediately realized that the two little devils were trying to restrain him through long-range attacks. As if he was angry at being looked down upon, he pulled out several throwing kunai from his waist and shot down the shurikens shot from the direction of Kaito. Then he waved his scimitar and rushed directly towards Mei. Fortunately, by this time, Mei's ninjutsu had been completed, and the water beneath her feet was violently turbulent. Dozens of water bullets rushed out of the water and shot at the enemy who was attacking her. The water wave just now was not just used for attack. In this kind of waterlogged environment, both herself and Kaito could better exert their combat effectiveness. However, Obake was completely unmoved. He swung his scimitar continuously to easily disperse the water bullets attacking him, and continued to rush towards Mei. On the other side, Kaito would naturally not just watch the enemy attack Mei. More than a dozen small water shurikens were shot at the Obake's body in a covering manner. However, Obake did not look back, and based on the sound of the breaking wind, he jumped into the air with his toes touching the ground. In the air, he dodged all the attacks of the water shuriken in an extremely strange posture. Fortunately, this round of attack also delayed some time, allowing Mei to create distance again. Is it not possible to use a covering attack? Kaito sighed silently in his heart, because he was worried that a single-shot water shuriken would not be able to hit the target. He originally thought that this covering attack could cause some damage to the enemy and reduce the opponent's combat power. Who would have thought that in the end it only served to delay the process? These close combat ninjas are really difficult to deal with. In fact, Obake also thought so. He thought that he could easily deal with the two genin devils. Unexpectedly, they were so difficult to deal with. Now it was difficult for him to even get close to them. Seeing that the other party did not continue to attack, Kaito took a break on the spot. Due to his young age and the fact that his strength is still developing, ordinary shurikens lack both lethality and flying speed, and are barely enough to be used to restrain him. However, if he uses ninjutsu attacks frequently, even if there are large areas of water around that can save chakra, but if he cannot cause harm to the opponent, it is ultimately not a long-term solution. While Kaito was still thinking about countermeasures, Obake on the opposite side had already launched another attack. The target is still Mei. Obake leaned forward, gradually increasing in speed, before Mei could estimate the distance and prepare to counterattack. Obake actually threw the scimitar with one hand, letting it spin in front of him, and he quickly formed seals with his free hands. His cheeks puffed up and his head tilted back slightly. After completing the seal, Obake caught the scimitar again. Puff, puff, puff. 3 wind bullets came out of his mouth one after another. The enemy suddenly switched to long-range attack, catching Mei off guard. Even though she tried her best to dodge in a hurry, she was still hit in the left leg by one of the wind bullets. In just a moment, the leggings were torn into pieces, and several cuts were made on the white calves. Blood gushed out, which was a terrifying sight. Seeing his teammates in danger, Kaito didn't care about saving chakra and hurriedly used Aqua Jet. A large amount of water burst out from his calves, pushing him to rush towards the back of Obake at a very fast speed. Mei was also enduring the pain in her legs and trying her best to distance herself from them. But just as Kaito was about to continue to form seals and perform a combo of water shuriken, the anticipation alarm in his mind suddenly became dozens of times more intense, and an unprecedented strong premonition stung his brain. There is no time to hesitate. Kaito slightly raised his toes, tightened his calves, and tried his best to adjust the direction of the Aqua Jet to slow down his momentum. The next moment, a scimitar flashing with a dazzling cold light broke out from the ground, passed through the not-so-thick water surface, and slashed straight towards him. When? No one expected that Obake actually had a Earth-style ninjutsu that can be used for hiding, and used his clone to feint an attack, thereby ambushing Kaito, who was anxious to rescue Mei. Fortunately, there was a warning of anticipation. Although Kaito didn't have time to change direction, he did slow down his speed. Obake misjudged the timing of the attack, giving Kaito a chance of survival. Kaito took out a kunai and held it in front of himself to block the attack. Ding! The kunai and the scimitar collided with each other, but the crisp and pleasant sound of metal clashing did not mean that he had successfully blocked this fatal attack. At the moment the two weapons collided, the pirate's scimitar actually cut off the kunai directly, and continued to slash towards Kaito without stopping. In an instant, blood splattered everywhere. The residual force of the Aqua Jet under his feet caused Kaito's body to be thrown backwards. Kaito, whose vision was a little blurry in the air, only then saw that a swaying and flickering blue-green chakra light had extended from the opponent's scimitar at some point in time. This is Vacuum Blade. Danzo's attack. End of this chapter. Chapter 30 Counterattack. Kaito spilled a lot of blood in the air, drew an arc, and fell heavily to the ground, splashing a large amount of water. The severe pain made him sober up a little. Obake thought that his sneak attack would directly cut the little devil in half, but he didn't expect the opponent to be so sharp and actually prepared in advance. But now that the other party was seriously injured, he naturally didn't want to let this devil go. He jumped out from the ground and immediately sprinted forward as soon as he landed on the ground. At this moment, a sharp short sword tore through the air and suddenly appeared in front of Obake. Obake subconsciously stopped and knocked the short sword in front of him away. Looking closely, it was Zabuza who had already dealt with Yukiba, who had one arm and came to support his teammates. Obake's eyes immediately turned red with anger. Although he and Yukiba had just an average relationship, after all, they were both sent to manage this gang of pirates at the same time and had been together on the same ship for several years. He may not care about the lives of other pirates, but Yukiba is different. Obake took a look at Kaito, who was lying on the ground in the distance, gave up chasing him, and turned to rush towards Zabuza. In fact, Zabuza was not having a good time at this time. Although the pirate named Yukiba had his arm cut by his sneak attack, he was also a chunin who was good at kenjutsu, and other pirates made sneak attacks from time to time, which put Zabuza in a difficult battle. Fortunately, the opponent's right arm was cut, so he could not form hand seals to perform ninjutsu, and the power of his left-hand sword was also greatly reduced. In the end, Zabuza was able to kill him with only minor injuries. Seeing Obake rushing towards him with anger, even a stubborn man like him didn't dare to fight and dodged the opponent's attack in a panic. On the other side, Kaito, who had come to his senses, finally had the chance to check his injuries. There was a nearly 20-centimeter wound on the chest, deep enough to see the bone, and blood had completely soaked the front of the shirt. For the first time, he felt the shadow of death so close to him. However, the strongest emotion in Kaito's heart was not fear, but a strong anger and desire for destruction. At this moment, he only wants revenge and to destroy everything that threatens his life. Just after dealing with the pirate minions, Blue saw his master was injured, so he hurried over, picked up Kaito's ninja tool bag and began to look for medicine. Seeing this, Kaito ignored the pain in his body, grabbed some ointment and smeared it randomly to stop the bleeding in his chest, then took out a few military rations pills and threw them into his mouth. Without even using a healing jutsu on himself, he stood up again and rushed towards the enemy. Although Kaito was extremely angry at this time, his mind was surprisingly clear. While running, he calculated his remaining chakra and quickly thought about how to win under the current conditions. Then he quickly formed seals with his hands, and a water clone immediately emerged from the water and stood beside him. Kaito did not stop, and threw several shurikens forward together with his clones. Blue, water gun, full force. Oh! == 3-inch. A high-speed rotating stream of water came out from the mouth of Blue, who was lying on his back, and carried the shurikens with it, flying towards Obake at a faster speed. It was not until this time that Obake noticed that the little devil, who he thought was seriously injured and dying, actually stood up. However, he did not panic. He nimbly turned sideways, preparing to avoid the water column attack. At the same time, he did not forget to kick Zabuza, who was trying to launch a sneak attack. However, this attack is not that simple. These shurikens were carried forward at high speed by the water column. Due to the rotation of the water flow itself, they were thrown out of the water column during flight and scattered around the water column like satellites. In an instant, the monotonous straight-line attack turned into a range attack. Seeing this change, Obake still did not panic. He jumped up again and dodged all the shuriken attacks with his extremely strange posture. Just at this moment, a delicate cry came from a distance. Water style, water whip. A long whip made of water came from a distance and instantly entangled Obake in midair. It was Mei who came to help out with her injured calf without anyone noticing. Kaito's eyes immediately lit up, but he continued to give orders. Blue, use bubbles. Then, the little frog began to frantically tear off the bubble on his neck and threw it at Obake entangled by the water whip. The sticky bubble instantly covered Obake's entire body, firmly restricting his movements. After seeing that the enemy was finally controlled, Kaito did not hesitate and quietly hid behind his own water clone. Obake, knowing that he was in danger, roared ferociously. Don't underestimate me, little devils. Although his body was restricted, causing the scimitar in his hand to have no suitable attack angle, Obake still forcibly twisted his wrist and activated the chakra wind blade. The blue-green blade light emerged from the scimitar again, instantly cutting off Mei's water whip, and the remaining force swept away some of the sticky bubbles. However, due to the angle, Obake himself was also cut. Obake, whose restrictions were partially lifted, threw the scimitar in his hand towards Kaito regardless of his injuries. Pa! The water clone blocking Kaito's main body exploded into a ball of water, but Obake seemed to have anticipated it and roared angrily as if to vent his anger. Water clone. I knew about it a long time ago. After throwing out the scimitar, Obake immediately began to form hand seals, preparing to use ninjutsu to defeat this clever little devil head-on. However, after the water clone exploded, what awaited him was not Kaito, who came forward for a close attack. A clear voice suddenly came from the sky directly in front of Obake. You guessed it. Then. Go to hell. At this moment, Kaito's body jumped high, holding a giant crystal-clear water shuriken in his right hand, shining brightly in the morning sun. The water clone that exploded in front also turned into several streams of water and merged into the water shuriken, causing its size to further expand. Kaito had already accumulated enough power, and he was like a fully drawn longbow. Water style, water shuriken. Kaito roared and tensed his body and swung his arms vigorously. This shuriken was infused with all of his chakra, and also absorbed a large amount of water in the environment. Finally, it was enhanced with the attack power of the torrent ability, and it flew out of his hand in an instant. It cut through the air at a speed almost invisible to the naked eye, and flew towards Obake with a violent spin. Squeak, squeak, boom. Because the attack distance was too close and Kaito was in the air, the water shuriken hit the ground immediately after it cut through Obake. Immediately, a huge column of water exploded on the water surface which was about to recede. The impact of the explosion directly blew away Kaito, who was closest to him, and Zabuza, who was holding a kunai and preparing to launch a sneak attack. Bang! X2. Two sounds of landing were heard in succession. Mei, who came rushing over from a distance, first took a look at Obake, who was already dead, then dragged her injured leg to the two of them. Is it over? Kaito and Zabuza, who were lying motionless on the ground, both turned their gazes to Mei. Well, it's over. Chapter 31. It's so good. Ding. You have defeated a Chunin opponent for the first time and have unlocked the achievement Chunin. It's like Mizuki, you know. You really are a Chunin. Can a Chunin be this strong? The belated system prompt sounded in his mind, making Mirukawa Kaito feel a little uncomfortable. Although he guessed at the beginning of the battle that the opponent might be an elite Chunin, the difficult battle that followed made him think that the opponent had the strength of a Jonin. He just didn't expect that he was overthinking it. As for the Mizuki mentioned in the achievement, he was almost beaten to death by Uzumaki Naruto. How could Kaito be beaten so badly by a Chunin like Mizuki who could only throw shuriken and talk nonsense? In fact, what Kaito did not consider was that Sakana Obake, as a Chunin who was nearly 30 years old, was at the prime of life and had a lot of experience. Although due to various reasons he does not have many abilities, and his hard power does not reach the level of a Jonin. Judging from his actual performance, he only has 2 low-level wind-style jutsu, 1 earth-style jutsu, and a decent kenjutsu. The only thing he can show off is the wind attribute chakra blade, which can barely be considered a signature skill. However, relying on these ordinary moves and his vast combat experience, the opponent is still considered very formidable and could be fully qualified for the position of a Jonin in some small ninja villages. If Zabuza hadn't dealt with his opponent in advance and came to support, Kaito and the other two might have died here. It seemed that after not hearing Kaito's voice for a long time, Zabuza turned his head with some effort to look over here. Kaito, are you okay? Although Zabuza was the least injured among the three, he was still lying in a puddle on the ground, not wanting to move at all. In the last period of time, he relied on kenjutsu and taijutsu to hold back his opponent, and his energy and strength were consumed too seriously. Don't worry, he won't die. Terumi Mei sat down next to Kaito in a bad mood and was searching for medical supplies in his tool bag. She is in the best condition at the moment. Although her calf injury is quite serious, there are no other problems. Seeing that her two teammates are weak, she has no choice but to treat their injuries first. Hiss. Kaito, who was about to get up, gasped. I had been in a state of excitement until now, and only then did I feel the pain again. Not only was there a tearing sensation at the wound, but also the soreness and weakness all over my body caused by overusing chakra. May, don't bandage it yet. Find all the military rations pills in my pocket, the black ones. Find them all. Kaito, you should not eat them in this state. Although May was helping to search, she still gave a reminder. Because most of the ordinary military rations pills in the ninja world actually restore physical strength by replenishing nutrition, that is, cell energy, and then stimulate the spirit through drugs. Chakra is a combination of these two, so it will naturally recover. It's just that ordinary military rations pills have a slow recovery speed, and most of them also have certain side effects. So even though it's safe now, May still doesn't recommend Kaito to do this. Don't worry, this is my special military rations pills, it has no side effects. Besides, I, the medical ninja, am still here, so just wait for the treatment. The special military rations pills that Kaito mentioned were naturally the PP supplement, military rations pills that he made after learning medical knowledge and drawing them through the reverse research system. However, although this kind of military rations pills has no side effects and the chakra recovery is immediate, the recovery amount can never be increased. The cost of continuing research and improvement was too high, so Kaito had to give up temporarily. Kaito took military rations pills that May found, took a look at them, and stuffed them all into his mouth. If the recovery amount of a single pill is not enough, then eat more. In order to make these military rations pills, Kaito sold all the golden pearls and big pearls he had drawn before for money. Naturally, he has to bring some with him every time he goes out just in case. Feeling the recovery of chakra, Kaito endured the pain and propped up his body, forming seals with his hands and performing ninjutsu. Water style, aqua ring. After a large amount of water flowed from the ground into Kaito's hands, it immediately split into three, turning into three circles formed by water, entangled the three people. However, Kaito did not completely heal the injuries of the three of them. He only began to apply medicine and bandages to himself and his two teammates after they had recovered most of their injuries. Medical ninjutsu, after all, heals injuries by stimulating cell division. The battle is over now. All we need to do is treat the injuries until they are stable. Subsequent slow drug treatment will be better for the body. Seeing how Kaito skillfully manipulated the three aqua rings, and remembering the multiple water shurikens he performed today, May couldn't help but sigh. Kaito, your control over ninjutsu has improved again. It can be considered as a side effect of practicing medical ninjutsu. After all, the medical ninjutsu requires great chakra control. In fact, whether it is the variant operation of aqua ring or water shuriken, Kaito had already had many ideas, and he did not feel particularly happy when he used them successfully. What he cared more about was the attack method of using water gun and shuriken that he came up with on the spur of the moment to cooperate with Blue in order to save chakra in the final battle. He got the inspiration from the water and earth combined ninjutsu that May used in her previous test. Blue's current long-range attack damage is worrying. If he just throws shurikens, it can be considered a good means of supplementing attack, both in terms of release speed and saving chakra. If he could go back and practice more diligently, maybe he could achieve the state of throwing out the shuriken when the water gun attacks the enemy, catching the opponent off guard. Not bad, I'll practice more when I go home. But what's a good name for this move? Zabuza grinned as he looked at Kaito, who was daydreaming while bandaging himself, and he wanted to take out his short sword and hit him twice. It was a waste of his previous risk and hard work to help the other party lure the enemy away. But in the end, Zabuza did not dare to offend the only medical ninja in his team. Kaito patted the bandaged area twice and nodded with great satisfaction. Yeah, not bad. Zabuza, look at my bandaging technique, and then look at the messy bandages wrapped around your face. An angry Zabuza ignored the pain and weakness in his body and sat up on the spot. Afterwards, the three small, weak and disabled people supported each other and found a rock to sit on near the harbor. Hey! When did this kid come here? The other two turned their heads and saw the little red-haired girl who was rescued by Kaito before, standing next to the three of them with a dazed look on her face. She just looked at the injured trio with a distracted look. The three of them looked back past each other's figures and found that many of the kidnapped children were holding their previous training weapons and running out of the camp one after another. However, after seeing Kaito and the other two, all the children who came out realized that the battle was over, and they all solemnly and silently put away their weapons. The children slowed down their pace and quietly walked towards the three people one by one. At this time, the red-haired girl who ran over first spoke to the three people with some difficulty. "Thank you. Thank you." The three of them looked at each other and relaxed even more. "That's great." Chapter 32 Mission ended. Ao returned empty-handed, and when he got back to the island, this was the scene he saw. About 20 children of different ages sat in a circle, with 3 slightly older kids in the middle, chattering about something. It feels like children taking a nap on the playground of an ordinary kindergarten. But the messy battlefield in the distance, the blood, the weapons, and the bodies of pirates lying on the ground, brought the picture back to what the ninja world should be like. Ao suddenly appeared in the crowd in an instant. Seeing an adult dressed as a ninja suddenly appear here, it immediately caused a commotion. Many children took out the weapons they had just hidden and looked at Ao with unfriendly eyes. It wasn't until Terumi-Mei spoke first that all the children let down their guard a little. "Ao-sensei, you are finally back." Ao nodded subconsciously in response, then called the 3 people aside to find out what was going on. However, while walking, he still looked at Mirukawa Kaito with a puzzled look. After Ao instantly came over, he saw that it was Zabuza that subconsciously looked towards his own position. On the contrary, Kaito, who he always thought had a keen sense and might have the talent of a perceptive ninja, did not notice his arrival at all. Kaito also noticed Ao's strange look, but seeing that the other party had empty hands and a strange expression, he probably didn't get the results he wanted, so he didn't say anything more. But it just so happens that there is a guy in Kaito's team who never acts according to other people's feelings. "Ao-sensei, how's the tracking going over there?" With the appearance of the epic mouth substitute Zabuza, Ao no longer worried about the level of perception. He said with a somewhat grim expression, "I lost them. When they were at sea, they used water-style ninjutsu to increase the speed of the boat. They were obviously aware of my pursuit and were on guard. After tracking the 2 people on the sea for a while, Ao found that he could not get closer. He was also a little worried about his 3 disciples, so he simply gave up the pursuit and chose to return. When he got closer to the island, he noticed the pirate ship and was afraid that something might have happened, so he immediately sped up and rushed over. But after the reunion, Ao was still a little surprised to see the pirate corpses on the beach and so many children rescued by the 3 of them. He looked at Zabuza, who was wrapped in bandages, and simply asked directly, "Let's not talk about my side. What happened on your side? How did Zabuza get hurt so badly?" The 3 of them were a little unresponsive for a moment, looking at each other. Well, Terumi-Mei only had her left calf injured, and after treatment and bandaging, it didn't look serious. Because Kaito's injury was on the chest, the bandage was basically covered by his outer clothes after it was wrapped. Only the scratches on the clothes and the blood stains that could not be identified showed that he seemed to be injured. Only Zabuza, who had multiple bandages covering his body for minor injuries and whose lower face and neck were already wrapped in bandages, looked as if he had been cut by a sword. It was Terumi-Mei who broke the silence first. "Ao-sensei, after you left." As the acting captain, Terumi-Mei recounted in detail what happened to the 3 of them on the island that night. During this period, Ao did not interrupt Terumi-Mei's narration, but at the end Ao still glanced at the 3 of them and spoke in a serious voice. "Why didn't you send out a flare for help?" When Ao opened his mouth, he made the 3 of them freeze for 2 seconds. Then they become really embarrassed. Zabuza spoke in a low voice, which was unusual for him. "I don't have any flares on me." Kaito didn't have any flares either, but it was hard to say. If he also passed the buck, then the entire responsibility would fall on Terumi-Mei, the acting captain. But in fact, before attacking the camp, the 3 of them thought that there was no need to interrupt Ao's investigation when dealing with a group of ordinary pirates. Later, after they attacked the pirate ship and found that the opponent was really difficult to deal with, the 3 of them were so focused on the battle at hand that they completely forgot about asking for help. Terumi-Mei thought that perhaps it was because she, as the acting captain, did not consider things comprehensively enough, which led to her teammates getting hurt, and she admitted her mistake in a depressed mood. "Ao-sensei, I am sorry." Ao's expression returned to gentleness and he interrupted Terumi-Mei's words. "Judging from the results, you did a good job. This mission is quite complicated and the difficulty is far beyond the capabilities of a genin. I will report to the village in detail after I return. The three of them breathed a sigh of relief when they heard this. Kaito immediately handed over some information that he had previously searched in the camp and on the pirate ship to Ao, but there was no crucial information. Ao then checked the bodies of the two Chunins, Sakana Obake and Yukiba, and unexpectedly, he made a discovery that the other three had not noticed. Holding two teeth engraved with strange curse marks in his hands, Ao examined them carefully in the sunlight. It's a very crude sealing technique. Nowadays, very few forces use this method to control their subordinates. Think of it as Hyuga or Root's seal. That let person control the life of people who are imprinted with it. Upon learning this information, the team members' expressions became more serious. After all, they knew before that there must be something complicated behind what these pirates did. But the strength of Sakana Obake and Yukiba was witnessed by all three of them. Being able to hire such powerful pirates to work for you and being able to train such Chunins as dead subordinates and instruct them to become pirates are two completely different concepts. Even ordinary small ninja villages would not be willing to waste their combat power in the latter way. After all, Ao, as a senior ninja, was able to keep his composure and spoke first. Let's take these kids back to Ringo village and complete the mission first. Yes, X3. Since Ao had given the instructions, Kaito was the first to relax. He immediately ran to the port and organized the children to board the ship. If the sky falls, there will be someone taller to hold it up. I am just a new genin, and the most important thing is to think about how to improve my own strength. But we also have to thank the pirates for bringing back their main ship, otherwise with so many children, the four of us would have to control the small boats in the port to take them back to the land of water. Although this unnamed island is not far from the coastline of the land of water, it is still difficult to control a ship through water-style ninjutsu at sea. For ninjas like us who are not skilled in operating boats, it would be more convenient for us to just run across the sea. No further words were needed. Team Ao sent all the kidnapped children to the pirate ship one after another, and also stuffed the bodies of the two Chunins into the sealing scroll. Although there are sealing jutsu on the other party's teeth, the village's intelligence analysis team will most likely not be able to obtain any information from their heads. However, the corpse itself can sometimes provide some information, so Ao decided to leave this matter to professionals. Finally, Kaito helped the dazed red-haired girl onto the splint and looked back at the nameless island again. This mission should be considered as overfulfilled, right? I hope there won't be any more troubles in the future. Chapter 33 Follow-up. The return voyage was smooth and did not take much time. However, when the pirate ship approached Ringo village, they were greeted by villagers holding various weapons and with hatred on their faces. There was no way. Although they took down the pirate flag, the black sails of the pirate ship were still too hateful. Besides, this ship had only just come to Ringo village to plunder, which meant that the villagers didn't have any long-range weapons, otherwise the welcome to Team Ao might have been even warmer. Fortunately, Dazu and Hugo had already returned to the village, and when they saw the few people get off the boat, there were no misunderstandings. Dad. Mom. Just as Mirukawa Kaito and his companions got off the boat with the 7 kidnapped children from Ringo village, all the other children ran crying to their surviving family members. Only the little red-haired girl who had been following Kaito since she got on the ship was still standing beside him in a daze. However, the little girl was not unresponsive. At this moment, her body was shaking, tears in her eyes slowly flowed down her cheeks, and she stared blankly at the figure standing in front of the villagers. Hugo, the man, rushed to the little girl like a madman and hugged the girl's thin body. "Amiri, my little Ringo, I'm so glad you're okay." Even though his daughter was kidnapped, this middle-aged man was still strong enough to rush to the Kirigakure village alone to issue the mission. This middle-aged man, who looked haggard from beginning to end, now hugged his daughter tightly and burst into tears. Everyone felt emotional when seeing this scene. Even some children from other villages who were still on the boat were infected by the atmosphere and started crying uncontrollably. Seeing the scene around him, Kaito felt a sense of satisfaction, but then he wondered if he was being too hypocritical. He had clearly never thought about saving those ninja school students from Zabuza before, but now he felt moved by saving a few strange children. I am really bad at this. Wait a second. Kaito suddenly widened his eyes and stared in amazement at the red-haired girl he had rescued. Amiri. Ringo village. Ringo Amiri. My goodness, this somewhat silly kid is actually the holder of the lightning blade, Kiba, among the future second generation of the 7 ninja swordsmen, the lightning-style genius Ringo Emiri who died young. The killer who, during the 4th Great Ninja War, used 2 lightning blade, Kiba and superb lightning-style ninjutsu to strike down the lightning-style ninjas of the Kimogakure village and made them flee in all directions. Now that he thinks about it, the kid's shark-like fangs and red hair are exactly the characteristics of Ringo Emiri. But he doesn't know if there's a genetic problem on the Land of Water side. There are just too many people with fangs. Like Hozuki Mangetsu, Hoshigaki Kisame, and Biwa Jozu, these people all have sharp teeth. So he never paid much attention to this before. No, if he thinks about it this way, these fangs are also members of the 7 ninja swordsmen. Ever since he was transmigrated and found out that his name contained the character, he had secretly wondered if he could get into the fruit group of the 7 ninja swordsmen and get a ninja sword to play with. Mi means fruit. His Chinese name is Ju, which means orange. He just realized now that he has this neat row of white teeth. Will it make him look a little out of place in the future? Thinking of this, Kaito turned his head and looked at Momochi Zabuza, who was in a daze beside him. Kaito knew that although this guy had a bandage on the lower half of his face, he actually had a mouth full of small fangs. Hey! What's that look in your eyes? Zabuza, who was watching the group of crying little kids getting off the boat out of boredom, seemed to sense Kaito's gaze and immediately glared back fiercely. Haha, don't be so sensitive, Zabuza. I just thought you seemed to have grown taller in the past few days. Go to hell. Zabuza became even more furious upon hearing this, and he wanted to draw his short sword immediately and fight to the death with Kaito. Alright, you two, that's enough. Terumi Mei stopped her 2 stupid teammates speechlessly, then walked up to Ao and asked. Ao-sensei, what are you going to do with these children from other villages? Let's talk to village chief Dazu first. After all, some of the children's hometowns may have been completely destroyed, and it won't be possible to send all the other children back in a short time. Do you want to entrust the villagers of Ringo village to send these children back? Kaito also came over and interrupted. We just hope to let these children stay for a while. The Land of Water has a special department to deal with such situations. Some of the children may be sent to ninja schools as war orphans. Ao still explained the situation to his 3 students. In fact, it is not uncommon to take in orphans during such missions in this chaotic ninja world. There are many such orphanages all over the Land of Water. For other children whose families are still alive, the daimyo will also issue some D-rank missions and arrange for a team of genin to send them back home. It's just that because there are too many hidden secrets in this mission, Ao needs to return to the village as soon as possible to report the situation, so he wondered if he could let these children rest in Ringo village for a while. After imparting some mission experience to his 3 students, Ao went directly to find Dazu, who was comforting the villagers. He briefly explained his request, and naturally Dazu would not refuse such a thing. After all, it was just a temporary placement for these children for a few days, and people from the Land of Water would come to take over later. Even because the village had just been attacked by pirates and many villagers were killed or injured, Dazu felt that it was acceptable to keep these children in the village. Ringo village itself is a village with abundant resources, but its economy is not developed due to its geographical location. Moreover, in this attack, the young and strong people in the village did not suffer much loss because they were out fishing, so it was not a problem to feed a few more children. After some explanation, everyone prepared to leave and return to the village early to report the situation. Thank you, Ninja-sama, for rescuing these children. Dazu knew that they were in a hurry to leave, so he didn't try to persuade them to stay, but just bowed deeply. Kaito took a last look at Ringo Emiri, who was still sobbing in her father's arms, and still didn't say much to Ao. Although she may become a genius ninja in the future. But first of all, Kaito couldn't explain how he knew her future talent. Secondly, he was just an ordinary genin now, and even if he recommended a genius to the village, it wouldn't bring any substantial benefits. Besides, she has just been reunited with her father, and it is unknown whether she hopes to become the genius ninja with lightning-style jutsu in the future. So Kaito only left a kunai for Ringo Emiri before leaving. If you want to become a ninja in the future, you can ask your father to take you to the Kirigakure village to find me. Kaito rubbed the red hair of the little girl, who was only 4 or 5 years old, then turned around and left gracefully. leaving behind the middle-aged man who had a confused look on his face, not knowing what the kid was doing, and Ringo Amuri who had a glimmer of light in her eyes. "Let's go, Kaito. What are you dawdling about?" Hearing Mei's voice, Kaito also put Blue on his shoulders, swung his hands behind him, and started the ninja run mode. On the other side, in the territory of a ninja clan in the Kirigakure village, two ninjas, a man and a woman, wearing ANBU masks, knelt on one knee in front of a desk. "Take off the mask, do you really think you are an Umbu ninja?" A somewhat cold male voice came into the ears of the two. "Yes, Patriarch-sama, X2. Upon hearing this, the two of them obediently took off their Umbu masks and put them aside. The Jonin female ninja among them looked up at the head of her clan and spoke. "Patriarch-sama, Island number 2 has been discovered. When we were preparing to receive the seeds, we encountered Team AO on their way to carry out a mission. Suguni and I were not sure we could keep them, so we had to retreat." "Okay, I get it. Collecting seeds through pirates is not a good idea. Let's stop for now." The cold voice didn't seem to care much about it. "I remember that kid named Momochi Zabuza was from Team AO, right?" "Yes, Patriarch-sama. We also saw him on the island. Should we get rid of him?" She doesn't know why the head of her clan would mention a genin. Although Zabuza is indeed quite famous in the village recently, he is just someone else's tool. "Nothing, you guys can leave first. Just accept some normal missions recently. The war is about to start, don't do anything unnecessary." After saying this, the man waved his hand, signaling the two to leave. After the two of them left in an instant, the man looked into the dark corner and muttered to himself with some emotion in his voice. "The brat is indeed an eyesore, but the one who is even more of an eyesore is that guy Karatachi Yagura." Chapter 34, Ninjutsu and Bloodline Limit. 7 or 8 days have passed since Mirukawa Kaito and his companions returned to the Kirigakure village. As soon as AO returned to the village, he reported the situation of the mission to the higher-ups. It is clearly a time of war now. Even if we don't count the kidnapping of Land of Water civilians, the appearance of unidentified ninjas pretending to be the Umbu of the Kirigakure village within the territory of the Land of Water should be a very serious matter. However, the village did not seem to take this very seriously. They just said they understood it and let Team AO carry on as usual. Perhaps the village has already arranged for the Umbu to investigate the matter, and thinks we don't need to know the follow-up situation. This is how AO explained to the team members. However, it doesn't matter what the village leaders think. After all, these things are too far away from them, a few genin. What made Kaito the most uncomfortable was that in this mission, they fought 2 Chunins ninja during the mission. The ninja mission record only recorded 1 C-rank completion. It was after this incident that Kaito realized that for missions issued by outsiders, if the ninja team finds that the difficulty of the mission does not match the published information while executing the mission, they can choose to give up. However, if the task is completed in excess, the village will not upgrade the task level afterwards. After all, the mission commission fee is limited. Since the person issuing the mission will not compensate the amount, the village leaders are even less likely to register a higher-level mission. Of course, if it is a war mission issued within the village, it is possible to be given a higher-rank mission reward afterwards, but this treatment is generally only given for missions above B rank. Anyway, this mission seems to have come to nothing. After returning to the village, everyone wanted to continue completing some C-rank tasks, but the number of tasks in the village was too small recently. Over the past few days, he only completed 1 C-rank mission, which was to protect a merchant in the Kirigakure village. There were no accidents during the mission, and he just accompanied the merchant on a tour in the Kirigakure village. Helplessly, he had to wait for the right task while carrying out his daily practice. Kaito was actually quite happy about this, but Hoshigaki Kisame had recovered and been discharged from the hospital a few days ago, which left him with one less person with whom he could exchange water-style ninjutsu. I don't know how his new team is going. Kaito completed his daily tasks as usual today, and then went to the training ground to do some routine training. These days, Blue said that he might be about to evolve, and now he just needs an opportunity. So Kaito wanted to accompany Blue to do some basic training. The next step is to try to see if Kaito can learn the new skill Water Pulse that Blue has just mastered before evolving. There was no way. This skill was too similar to protagonist Uzumaki Naruto's Raise Non. Kaito felt that if he didn't learn it, he would be letting down his identity as a genin. Although the water pulse condensed in the hand was not a pure chakra ball, but a light blue water ball, it did not cause high damage like the Raisnon under the extreme form change of compressed chakra. However, the water balls created by water pulse can be thrown, which is more advanced than ordinary Raisnon. Just when Kaito was thinking about all these things, he found himself at the training ground. But Zabuza was not seen today. Only Terumi Mei was sitting alone at the edge of the training ground, holding a booklet and reading something. Kaito originally planned to walk over quietly, but he didn't expect that she would notice him first. Mei turned around and looked at him in a silly way. "What are you researching? Why does it feel like you've lost your soul?" It was rare to see Mei acting like this, and Kaito found it a little funny, so he asked. Mei hesitated for a moment, but still answered. "My father's previous research notes were about studying the fusion of water and earth attribute chakras and bloodline limits." Kaito was slightly surprised when he heard this. He knew about Mei's father, who was once a powerful jonin in the village and the sensei of Ao. According to Ao himself, he had taken good care of him as a junior and helped him many times. It's just that he suffered serious injuries while on a mission a long time ago, and was unable to continue serving as a ninja. Fortunately, he is still alive and his previous connections are still there. Therefore, Mei's life in the village is much better than that of pure orphans like Kaito and Zabuza. Kaito had always been puzzled. In the original work, Mei clearly had double bloodline limits, so why is she just an ordinary ninja now? It now appears that these two bloodline limits were indeed fused by Mei herself later, but she received some help from her father during the development process. There are roughly two types of bloodline limits. Physical bloodline limits such as the Shikatsumiyaku bloodline, the Sharingan, and the Byakugan are mostly inherited from ancestors related to the Otsutsuki clan. The bloodline limits of jutsu such as ice style, lava style, and boil style can be achieved by fusion of two chakras of different natures through the ninja's proficient mastery of the properties of chakra to form a new jutsu. After this bloodline limit is successfully fused, it can also be inherited by one's offspring. The future Mei should be considered the first generation of bloodline ninja. Hey, you're a genin now and you're already researching things like fusing bloodline limits. Although he admitted that Mei was definitely a genius, wasn't it a bit too early for her to start studying the fusion of two chakra properties at the age of 10? When Mei heard that Kaito actually looked down on her, she immediately became angry. What's wrong with a genin? You've developed several jutsu on your own, haven't you? Kaito then realized that the problem was with himself. But I'm cheating. Of course, Kaito cannot say this to Mei, so he had to explain. I have no channels to learn more ninjutsu, so I have no choice but to do this. It is a waste of time and effort. And now, if you directly learn mature ninjutsu, you will definitely be able to improve your combat power faster. This kind of thing will definitely be more effective when you have a more detailed understanding of the nature of chakra in the future. Mei felt a little embarrassed when she heard this. Although her father could no longer be a ninja, at least he was still alive and could guide her in her training. Kaito's parents both died during the mission, so it seems that he can only rely on himself. I didn't say I had to try it now. I was just sitting here and taking a look because I was tired of practicing. Seeing that Mei sounded a little guilty and avoided his gaze while trying to make excuses, Kaito was a little confused. What's wrong with this girl? She looked so fierce just now. But if you can't figure it out, don't think about it. As long as she doesn't worry about how to develop her ninjutsu, it will be fine. Kaito has always been good at enlightening himself. The little scene passed by in a daze, and the two began training as usual. However, for fear of irritating Mei again, Kaito was not in a hurry to study how to turn the water pulse into a ninjutsu today. Instead, he concentrated on accompanying Blue to do basic training, so as to strive for early evolution. But today is a little strange. The two people and the frog have started training for a long time, but Ao and Zabuza have not yet arrived at the training ground. Normally, Kaito, who goes to do the system's daily tasks first every day, is often the last to arrive. But the two didn't take it too seriously. After all, they are still in the village, so there will be no danger at all. Kaito guessed maybe they just had something urgent too. Chapter 35, Secret Talk. Time goes back to morning. Momochi Zabuza was the first to arrive at the training ground. When he saw Ao arrive, he immediately stepped forward. Ao-sensei, the Jonin Yagura wants to talk to you about something. Ao was a little stunned when Zabuza suddenly said this. He should be considered as a neutral person on the side of Elder Genji, and he doesn't have much in common with Karatachi Yagura, the current leader of the civilian faction. But they were usually acquaintances, so why did he need Zabuza to tell him when he wanted to talk to him? Besides, Zabuza is his student now, so why did he come to invite him on behalf of Karatachi Yagura? What's the matter with Jonin Yagura? Why didn't he come to me directly? Ao asked Zabuza with a somewhat dark face. However, Zabuza was such a smart guy that he could not tell that Ao was in a bad mood at the moment, so he answered very straightforwardly. I'm not sure. It seems like he needs your help with something, but it's inconvenient for too many people to know, so he let me tell you. Ao's expression improved a little after hearing this. When and where shall we meet? Now, I'll take you there. Ao, whose mood had just calmed down a little, now had a completely dark face. He looked at his stupid student and suppressed the anger in his chest. Move. After Ao followed Zabuza all the way to another remote training ground, he was even more upset. Does a secret meeting mean moving from one empty training ground to another empty training ground early in the morning? For a moment, Ao even felt that the senior Jonin, Karatachi Yagura, was not so reliable. But since he was already here, Ao decided to meet him first and hear what he wanted to say. Just as Ao and Zabuza walked into the empty training ground, a ninja with green hair, a baby face and a huge hook on his back appeared in front of them in an instant. This person who came was none other than Karatachi Yagura. Ao was also secretly shocked. Although he did not use any perception ninjutsu, the other party was able to appear in front of him so silently. His strength was indeed far superior to his own. I'm so sorry to bother you to come here just to meet me. Yagura remained humble in this situation and Ao did not care about him commanding his student privately. Tell me what's the urgent matter first. Yagura also stated his purpose with a serious expression. It's like this. I suspect that the pirate mission your team carried out before was secretly done by a clan in the village. This is not a serious matter. Almost all ninja clans have some hidden power. But growing power by arresting civilians and smuggling weapons still violates the bottom line of the village. It's just that the Mizukage-sama seems to want to suppress this matter temporarily because of the war that is about to begin. But I think that it is precisely because of the war that such things that may undermine the stability of the village cannot be allowed to happen. Besides, if the daimyo knew that someone in Kirigakure treated the people of Land of Water like this, he would most likely reduce his support for the village in the upcoming war. Ao looked calmly at Yagura as he spoke righteously about the dangers of the matter. Ao just doesn't know how much of what he said was for the Kirigakure village and how much was for factional struggles. However, although he belongs to the neutral faction, he is, after all, of common origin. Moreover, kidnapping children is indeed against the ninja code, so Ao doesn't mind helping Yagura. How are you going to handle this? I've read your mission report this time. The supplies and weapons of that pirate base were provided by a merchant from the Takumi village. Based on my experience, this is 90% true. And since it's smuggling, it's definitely not just a small business of providing supplies and weapons to a few dozen small pirate groups. I will arrange for someone to issue a mission to the Takumi village. I hope you can accept this mission and go to the Takumi village to secretly investigate the situation and find out which clan is secretly trading with the other party. After saying this, Yagura seemed to be afraid that Ao would not want to get involved in such troublesome matters, so he added. But don't worry, it doesn't matter even if you don't find anything. As long as you complete the surface mission, it won't affect your team. I will also investigate this matter from other aspects at the same time. Ao was not surprised by the arrangement made by Yagura. This kind of open mission to cover up secret investigation was a common method used by ninjas. But there were still some doubts in his mind. Ao did not hide it and asked directly. Why do you want my team to investigate this? There should be many people in the village who you trust more to carry out the mission. Ao didn't tell him directly where his subordinates were. After all, Yagura was only the Jonin commander, which was a nominal position as the representative of all the Jonin. He didn't actually hold any position in the village, and he had no actual command power in non-wartime. Most of his subordinates should be considered as defectors from the civilian faction. After all, my previous proposal for an investigation has been rejected by Mizukage-sama, and I am too big a target. Many clans in the village are watching my every move. If someone who is too close to me investigates, I am worried that it will alert the enemy. Ao also accepted Yagura's reason. So if we find out which clan is responsible, what are you going to do? This. Yagura seemed a little hesitant, but thinking that he was going to ask Ao for help, he finally chose to tell the truth. It depends on which clan it is. After all, if it really causes too much turmoil in the village. Ao saw the helpless look on Yagura's face and understood what he meant. Just like the reason why the Mizukage suppressed the matter, if a large ninja clan was really divided because of something during the war, the harm caused to the Kirigakure village would be immeasurable. After all, the Kirigakure village is not Kanagakure village, so its tolerance for certain things is still higher. But no matter who is behind this, I will make him pay the price. As if realizing that his hesitation just now was somewhat inappropriate, Yagura added another sentence. He didn't know whether he was explaining to Ao or strengthening his own belief. Okay, I'll take this mission. After some thought, Ao decided to take on the task, but more out of consideration for training his students. The team has been reorganizing for some time, both through daily training and mission execution. Ao can clearly know that his 3 students are rare geniuses. He did not expect reforms to be implemented now like Yagura, but instead focused more on the future. Ao believes that as long as these 3 people grow up, they will definitely bring different changes to the Kirigakure village. However, when Ao thought of this, he suddenly realized something and turned to look at Zabuza, who had been listening to the conversation between him and Yagura from the beginning. Looking at Zabuza's eyes that seemed to be half asleep and half awake, yet revealed a clear and foolish look, after he looked at him, he suddenly pretended to be resolute and cold. Ao seemed to be worried about the future of the village again. Chapter 36, Rumors about Zabuza. On the other hand, there are 2 geniuses that Ao considers to be rare. Mirukawa Kaito. Terumi Mei's angry roar rang out in the training ground. Mei was soaked like a drowned rat, with a lot of sticky bubbles on her hair and body. At this moment, she was sitting under a big tree, staring at Kaito in front of her with an angry face. Kaito, who also had a small amount of sticky bubbles on his body, scratched his head in embarrassment and was thinking of asking Blue to help him out. Who would have thought that the little guy had already hidden away somewhere unknown? He had no choice but to go forward and comfort Mei. I've been loving it in vain. Kaito complained angrily. In the morning, Kaito accompanied Blue to complete a series of basic training. Thinking back to the last time he was fighting the pirate captain, he was attacked when he used the aqua jet to charge forward. At the last moment, the anticipation had clearly reminded him of the opponent's next attack, but he still couldn't completely avoid it. So he plans to train himself to be more flexible when using this ninjutsu. This method of training flexibility is also simple. In the training ground, in a relatively dense forest, use the aqua jet to accelerate the sprint. While avoiding complex terrain obstacles, arrange for Blue to use the bubbles on his neck to launch a sneak attack in the woods. Not long after Kaito started training, Mei next to him seemed to think that this training method was good, so she joined in the evasion training. Although Mei does not currently know any ninjutsu to accelerate movement, simply using chakra to concentrate on the feet and legs to increase explosive power is also suitable for this type of training. In this way, the 2 people and the frog started a passionate and chaotic fight in the grove. However, Blue, who has mastered the high-speed technique of quick attack, and is smaller in size, clearly has an absolute advantage in this forest dodgeball battle. At first, the 2 could only resist Blue's throwing attacks with difficulty. Although the training effect is very significant, it is still a bit frustrating. It was not until later that Kaito discovered that among the 3, Mei was clearly the slowest and least flexible. He simply began to use Mei to attract firepower, moving back and forth between the trees and Mei to create opportunities for counterattack. Mei reacted quickly to Kaito's little tricks, but since she was the slowest, she could only grit her teeth and persevere. However, the training continued for a while. Kaito once again used Mei as a cover to avoid Blue's attack. He wanted to take advantage of the situation to jump onto a big tree nearby and look for another opportunity, but the frustrated Mei threw 3 water balls at Kaito with her backhand. Kaito, who was in midair, had no time to think, and subconsciously used his waist and abdomen to lift his legs, preparing to use the powerful thrust of the aqua jet to move sideways in the air to avoid the attack. But as luck would have it, the direction of his raised foot was right towards Mei. The high-speed gushing water hit Mei directly with a powerful impact force. Completely unprepared, Mei was instantly swept away by the current and only stopped when she hit a thick tree. Fortunately, Aqua Jet is not an attack skill and did not cause any damage. However, Mei, who had already been hit hard by Kaito's water ball and Blue's sticky bubbles, was now completely soaked. Although bumps and bruises are inevitable in ninja training, in the end even Kaito himself felt that it was not very nice to treat a child like this. In this way, the two of them ended the morning training by playing and fighting. Fortunately, since the team was formed, the training ground where they were located is a small training ground with relatively complete facilities in the village. There is a changing room like a swimming pool at the entrance. I don't think Ao-sensei and that Zabuza guy will come today. What are your plans for the afternoon? Mei walked out of the locker room and saw Kaito and Blue playing hand fighting there out of boredom, so she started to ask. I was planning to go to the hospital to practice medical ninjutsu this afternoon, but I don't have any patients who have made appointments in advance. If you think it's too boring to practice alone, I can stay here with you. He subconsciously answered Mei's question, but as soon as he finished saying this, Kaito realized that something was wrong. With Mei's tsundere personality, there would only be one answer after he said this. Really? It's just training. Who would be bored? And I have to go home to refine my chakra in the afternoon too. Mei originally wanted to go home and ask her father for advice on bloodline fusion, but then she changed her mind because she was afraid of upsetting the orphan Kaito. However, Kaito did not realize this. After all, he was not the original owner of this body, and in fact, he did not feel much about his orphan status. Okay, let's go have lunch first and then go our separate ways. Having said that, the two stopped talking and took their backpacks to the ramen restaurant they often visited next to the training ground. This ramen shop is a typical traditional Japanese ramen, and the decoration is somewhat similar to Ichiraku ramen in Kanahagakure village. A simple wooden structure with a slightly sloping roof and a very ordinary welcome sign at the door. The entire store is not very large, with a bar that can only seat 4 or 5 customers. Inside is a semi-open kitchen, and customers can see busy figures inside while waiting for their meals. When the two arrived at the ramen restaurant, there were already 2 ninjas wearing chunin vests sitting at the bar and eating. Kaito and the other person didn't think much about it and walked straight to 2 seats at the side to start ordering food. However, not long after the two of them finished ordering, the topic discussed by the ninja next to them, who seemed to have finished eating and was resting, reached their ears. You've heard about that kid nicknamed Demon, right? Of course, I've heard about it a long time ago. How cruel. He killed more than 100 classmates before they even graduated. Yes, and he graduated successfully. I have to admire him. TSK, this kind of genius must have been noticed by some big shot. A genin has his own title. Haha, I think you are envious. There are so many jonin who haven't made a name for themselves in the ninja world yet. The 2 chunin stood up and left the ramen shop while talking and laughing. Although Kaito heard the conversation between the 2 people, he didn't take it too seriously. He had thought about these questions since he had transmigrated to this world and learned that he and Zabuza were classmates. Since Zabuza has made this choice, he can only bear the subsequent criticism and strange looks alone. So Kaito simply took out a small bowl and scooped out some of the large portion of ramen that had just been served to Blue. However, Kaito discovered that Mei was staring blankly at her ramen, looking as if she was troubled by something. What? Are you worried about Zabuza? Don't worry, that guy is stronger than you think. Of course, Kaito, who has read the original novel, knows that Zabuza was not defeated by these rumors, and later became one of the famous 7 ninja swordsmen in the village. However, Mei's answer left him a little confused. Of course I know that he is strong at heart, at least he is stronger than me. Mei looked at Kaito with a lonely expression and said, you know what? Sometimes I envy Zabuza and you very much. Chapter 37, Terumi Mei's Thoughts. Mirukawa Kaito, who was being stared at by Mei with a complicated expression, was completely confused at the moment. Envy me? And Zabuza? Yes. Kaito put down his chopsticks and looked at Mei in confusion. This child was not a sentimental person. Besides, he and Momochi Zabuza were both orphans. What was there to envy about them to Mei, who had both parents? You want to be an orphan too? Mei almost choked to death over these words, and her emotions became incoherent for a moment. She gave Kaito a cold look. "What are you thinking? I'm just envious of the way you became a genin." After being interrupted by Kaito, Mei's mood recovered a little and she began to explain the reason for her envy. "You know what? Actually, when I graduated last year, the Jonin Yagura came to see me. Looking for you. Could it be?" With such a shocking piece of news coming out suddenly, Kaito couldn't believe his own guess for a moment. "Yes, he asked me to do what Zabuza did this year. Because I was the top student that year, he had no other choice but me. With your father's connections, how could Karatachi Yagura let you do such a thing? As a veteran Jonin, his connections in the village are obviously not limited to AO. If juniors like Karatachi Yagura dare to underestimate him just because he has retired from the ninja sequence, they will definitely suffer. He went to see my father first. He told me to make my own choice." Mei paused for a moment, looking at her bowl of noodles, and said, "I refused. I didn't know at the time if doing this could really change the village policy. If it failed, my hands would be stained with the blood of my companions." Having said that, Mei looked at her hands as if she was a little dazed. Without waiting for Kaito to comfort her, she continued with a trembling voice, "Even so, I was still stained with blood during the graduation exam. I just wanted to steal her badge, but I ended up killing her by mistake." This. As a person who avoided exams, Kaito didn't know how to comfort her. But at this time, Mei might just want someone to talk to. "I thought this was the fate of the Blood Mist Ninja until I met you. You were promoted to Genin through Medical Ninja, and you were not stained with the blood of your fellow villagers." Kaito previously thought that the ninjas from those big clans were not stained with the blood of their companions because they didn't need to go to ninja school at all. But he was not Momochi Zabuza after all, so he did not explain anything at this time. Later, in this year's graduation exam, Zabuza accomplished what I didn't dare to do back then, and he succeeded in the end. So when you two became my teammates, I was actually very envious of you. I've always wondered, is someone like me who doesn't have the courage to take on all this and has been stained with the blood of my companions really qualified to be the Kage of the village? Of course you can become the Mizukage. This is my judgment based on my reading of the original work." Seeing this 10-year-old girl with such a heavy heart, Kaito silently cheered her up in his heart. At the same time, he stretched out his hand and pressed it on Mei's reddish-brown hair. Blue, who was working hard to eat, saw his master like this and also put his little hand on Mei's hand. "You just have to believe in the path you are on and move forward with big strides. Mei, I also believe that you will become the best Mizukage." The Kirigakure village, which is usually shrouded in mist, was unusually sunny today. The midday sun shone through the awning of the ramen restaurant onto the two people in the store, as if to dispel the haze in people's hearts. "Pa." With a crisp sound, Mei blushed and gently slapped away the hand that was pressing on her head. "Your trotters are all greasy, don't touch my hair." The little girl pretended to be angry and scolded Kaito, but the hand she used to slap Kaito away was not the one that Blue was holding down. Kaito withdrew his hand somewhat awkwardly and rubbed Blue's head, signaling it to continue eating. "Haha, eat, eat." Perhaps because she had finally spoken out her deepest thoughts, Mei's mood quickly returned to normal and she quietly ate the ramen in her bowl. However, the atmosphere between the two seemed to be much more harmonious than before. The two of them finished their lunch quietly, and Kaito did not mention training together in the afternoon. After saying goodbye to each other at the entrance of the ramen shop, they went their separate ways. Kaito did not go home, but went directly to the Kirigakure village hospital. "Aunt Keiko, long time no see. It's only a few days. Things in the village have been quite busy lately." When Nakamura Keiko saw Kaito greeting her, the fatigue on her face faded a little. Recently, Kaito has often come to the hospital to improve his clinical experience, but the time is uncertain. Nakamura Keiko has been busy participating in the village's pre-war preparations, and the two have not met for some time. "Kaito, have you grown taller recently?" Nakamura Keiko said as she placed her hand between Kaito's head and herself. "Haha, really? I didn't even notice it myself." Kaito said that he didn't care, but the corners of his mouth curled up a little. As an adult who had transmigrated as a child, how could Kaito not care about his height? Besides, Zabuza was 183 centimeters tall when he grew up, and he didn't want to be overtaken by a kid. When Nakamura Keiko saw Kaito like this, the smile on her face became a little gentler. It means that you have been eating well recently. Perhaps it was due to the hormones in his body after transmigration. Kaito felt that his mentality was getting younger and younger, and he was not averse to this way of talking to Koch's children. As they were talking, the two of them had already walked into the ward and restrained the smiles on their faces. After all, they had to appear professional when treating the injured. The ninja lying on the hospital bed was from the Yuki clan. Generally, ninjas from such large clans, especially those from bloodline clans, would not be sent to the hospital. However, this ordinary chunin, who is not young, does not seem to have inherited the ice-style Kekkei Genkai, and should be the kind of person who is not valued in the clan. Although this person is a branch member of the Yuki clan, he is very arrogant. The day before yesterday, Kaito's excellent treatment saved his life, but the two of them didn't have much communication. Today, he just came over as a routine to check on his recovery. After briefly asking about the other person's physical condition and doing some routine checks, Kaito was ready to leave the ward. Just as he was about to leave the ward, a young girl came in. Well, perhaps it was not appropriate to call her a girl considering Kaito's age. The girl who came in looked about 16 or 17 years old, which should be considered an adult in the Naruto world. She had long black hair and dignified and gentle facial features. She gave people a gentle and kind feeling. However, judging from her body movements, she should be just an ordinary person, so Kaito didn't care much about it. "Sorry, little brother, I didn't notice you." Kaito was about to correct her address with a frown on his face, but the middle-aged man on the hospital bed scolded him first. "Nanako. This medical ninja is my attending physician. You are a trained member of the Yuki clan, so behave like one." "I'm sorry, father." "Ninja-sama, I'm sorry." After saying this, the girl named Nanako quickly bowed to Kaito. Kaito was also caught off guard by this situation. He just said that he didn't mind and hurriedly left the ward. It was only after he walked out of the ward that he realized that the girl's appearance seemed somewhat familiar. But the other person is also very good-looking, and if he has seen her before, he should remember her. Besides, this girl wasn't a ninja, and he didn't know many ordinary civilians. Since he couldn't figure it out, he simply gave up on investigating further. What Nanako? The Yuki clan. Her full name can't be Setsuna, right? I don't know, but it means. Kaito feels that he has once again refreshed his understanding of naming in the ninja world. Chapter 38 New Mission. The next morning, the Kirigakure village was shrouded in mist as usual. Mirukawa Kaito arrived at the training ground early today, mainly because today's daily tasks were a bit strange and did not include the most common training tasks as usual. Instead, tasks like, say hello to 10 people, and, walk 10 kilometers, appeared. The system usually gives tasks that can be easily completed under the current circumstances. This reminded Kaito of the situations when he left the village twice before. Considering that Ao did not come to the training ground yesterday, Kaito guessed that there might be some new tasks today. Sure enough, not long after, Ao and Zabuza arrived at the training ground one after another. Ao did not start to instruct the two in training as usual, but said to wait for Terumi-Mei to arrive first. Seeing Zabuza's expression of, "I knew it a long time ago," next to him, Kaito was even more certain that today was definitely not a simple training or an ordinary mission. Not long after, Mei also came to the training ground. She looked at Kaito, who had listened to her confession yesterday, with some embarrassment. Then she found that the three of them were staring at her with wide eyes, and Mei was also a little puzzled. "Why are you standing here instead of training? Are you waiting for me?" Ao, who was about to speak, looked at his disrespectful student and immediately began to doubt himself. Am I too easygoing? Should I be more serious with them next time? But after thinking about it, he realized that he had important things to do today, so he put aside his complicated emotions for the time being. For safety reasons, Ao first formed hand seals and performed perception ninjutsu. After confirming that there was no one else around, he explained the whole story to the two students who did not understand the situation. That's basically the situation. Today, the Jonin Yagura will arrange for a ninja tool shop funded by civilians to assign us a task. We will escort a clerk to the Takumi village to order ninja tools. Of course, although this mission is to cover up a secret investigation, if you don't want to have another failure record in your mission resume, we must complete this open mission as well. After listening to Ao's account of the series of events, Kaito felt that his imagination was still not rich enough. Such a task was just thrown to his team. Even though there is a senior ninja named Ao leading the team, there is too little known information right now. Where should we start the investigation? We only have information about a merchant who is suspected to be from the Takumi village. Which direction should we start our investigation from? Before Kaito could speak, Mei asked Ao the same question. Ao did not answer Mei's question immediately, but instead asked the three students a question. How much do you know about the Takumi village? Seeing that neither of her teammates had the intention to speak, Mei answered directly. The Takumi village is a small village located in the land of rivers, which is between the land of fire and the land of wind. Takumi village doesn't have many armed forces, and it is basically full of highly skilled craftsmen. Their combat power ranks last in the entire ninja world. However, thanks to the excellent ninja tool forging ability of the Takumi village, the ninja tools they forged are highly respected in the 5 great ninja countries. Not only do they have regular ninja tools, they even often forge some advanced weapons containing chakra metals. This allows them to get along with all the great ninja countries. Ao nodded. What Mei said was what they learned in class at the ninja school. You are right, but what I want to say is that due to political pressure from all sides and the taxation of the Takumi village, in fact, all the sales of ninja tools and the import of materials in the Takumi village are strictly controlled by the chief of the Takumi village. His status in the Takumi village is not inferior to that of the daimyo of the land of rivers. Kaito asked thoughtfully after hearing this. That is to say, unless the smuggling was done by the leader of the Takumi village, but that doesn't make sense. Privately reaching a deal with the internal forces of our country will not bring him much benefit. On the contrary, it may offend our Kirigakure. For a small ninja village with no strength, it is too costly. Or maybe it was done by some self-interested people in the Takumi village. If that's the case, then the Takumi village, which has strict control over domestic materials and finished products, should have more or less known where these things went. But the premise of all this is that the merchant is indeed a merchant from the Takumi village, where the materials are indeed from the Takumi village. Ao gave him an approving look and added. Yes, so our main target for this investigation is the chief of the Takumi village. The clerk of the ninja tool shop who is to be escorted in the open mission will also trade with the chief of the Takumi village under our accompaniment, which will facilitate our investigation. Mei thought about it and asked her own question. So how long do we stay there? After all, what if we can't find any results in a short period of time? Don't worry, the person who issued the mission was arranged by Jonin Yugura. He will cooperate with us and stay longer. And it doesn't matter if we don't find any results in the end. After all, it's just a personal commission from Jonin Yugura. Zabuza, who had been watching his two teammates and Ao discussing the mission without getting a word in, raised his head slightly when he heard Ao's last words, but still didn't say anything. On the contrary, Kaito agreed with Ao's words. To be honest, when he saw the village destroyed by pirates during the mission and the children who were abducted and trained as assassins, he was also very angry and wanted to punish the murderer. However, so many days had passed since the incident, and Kaito had long lost his original indignation. After all, in this chaotic ninja world, everyone's life was worthless. Kaito felt that it was not wise to get involved in the struggle between the civilian faction and the ninja faction for the sake of some strangers and offend either side. Of course, if he had the strength of the 6 paths level at this time, it would be a different situation. Kaito might hold the banner of justice and sanction these people. How dare you do such a thing, you scoundrels? Shinra Tensei. Okay, now that you understand the details, let's go to the Mizukage building to receive our mission. Ao spoke again, interrupting Kaito's daydream of punching pain and kicking 6 paths, and signaled his students to follow him and head towards the Mizukage building. In cases like this where the client designates a person to complete a task, the village usually verifies the task and then notifies the task team to come and collect the task. However, since Team Ao has already arrived at the mission acceptance point, it saves the village a lot of effort. Although the reward for a designated mission is often higher than a normal mission, it is still the price of a C-rank escort mission after all. Team Ao will also conduct investigations in secret. Therefore, the entire team, even Zabuza, did not think that there was anything wrong in earning a little more money from Karatachi Yagura. Because they didn't want to attract too much attention from other people, especially those clan ninjas, they didn't rush to the Takumi village after receiving the mission. Instead, just like an ordinary mission, they took their time to go to the ninja tool shop to meet the person who issued the mission to understand the mission situation. They each went back to make their own preparations before departure, and then took the clerk with them and left the Kirigakure village. Chapter 39, Transform Zabuza. On the way to the port, Mirukawa Kaito noticed that Zabuza had been looking at the target of their escort on this mission from time to time. Unable to help but feel curious, he leaned over and asked in a low voice. "What's wrong, Zabuza? Did you notice something wrong with him?" As he spoke, Kaito also looked at the clerk. His gray hair was tied into a ponytail, and his bronze face was covered with deep wrinkles. But he looked like an old man, and his body and head seemed to have grown independently. It was already autumn, and he was only wearing a short-sleeved gray coarse cloth shirt, exposing his muscular body, and one of his arms was almost as thick as his waist. Looking at it this way, it does seem a bit strange. That guy seems to be a blacksmith. Zabuza answered Kaito's question subconsciously. Blacksmith. That's it. Kaito was also speechless by this guy. What's so strange about the person in the ninja tool shop being a blacksmith? Zabuza finally withdrew his gaze and said hesitantly. That old man seems to be a very famous forging master in the village. Now it was Kaito's turn to be stunned. After all, he didn't have much demand for ninja tools in his daily life. The only requirement he might have is that they should be cheap. He had never paid attention to any forging masters. However, before Kaito could say anything, the old man spoke loudly to the two of them. Hey! Are you two little brats saying bad things about me? Even though I am old, I have very sharp ears. The two of them looked at the old man with dark faces. He was obviously not far away, but his voice was very loud. Although Kaito doesn't know whether it's due to years of blacksmithing or old age, judging from the current situation, this old man obviously has hearing problems. Kaito doesn't know how he heard their discussion. Kaito didn't know what was wrong with his head. In order to ease the embarrassment, he actually started talking like a child. Grandpa, we were just talking about how you are a great blacksmith. However, as soon as these words came out, Zabuza, Mei, Ao, and Blue, all immediately looked at Kaito as if they were looking at some magical species. After receiving the looks from his teammates, Kaito wanted to slap himself twice. But the old man didn't notice these, but laughed heartily with great enjoyment. Haha, you have good vision, kid. I am the famous Shimatsuki Ichiro, and my father is a legendary swordsmith who once participated in the creation of 7 ninja swords. There seemed to be something wrong with what the old man said, but before Kaito could think about it, Zabuza asked. Your father participated in the forging of 7 ninja swords. Have you forged any famous swords? Kaito saw that the old man's expression paused for a moment when he heard Zabuza's question. Ha ha ha, of course I inherited my father's forging skills. He forged the lightning blades, Kiba and the twin blades, Hiramakarei, which are among the best even among the 7 ninja swords. So you've built the wowo yourself. Seeing that the white-haired old man looked like he was about to cry, Kaito hurriedly covered Zabuza's mouth as he was about to speak and forcibly pulled him aside. Really, even with bandages on, this guy still can't control his mouth. Stop talking. Have you heard of any other famous swords besides the 7 ninja swords in the Kirigakure village? After saying this, Kaito hurriedly turned around to look at old man Shimatsuki Ichiro. Fortunately, he spoke in a low voice this time and the other party didn't seem to hear it. However, the old man seemed to have lost interest in talking to the little devil and continued to walk forward on his own. Seeing this, everyone had no choice but to quickly follow him. Zabuza shook his head, broke free from Kaito and returned. Of course not, so my goal is to seize one of the 7 ninja swords and become one of the 7 ninja swordsmen. Looking at the fire of ambition in Zabuza's eyes. All Kaito could think of was the strange scene of this guy carrying the executioner's blade as big as a door panel, crouching down and hiding in the hidden misjutsu to carry out assassinations in the future. He seemed a little pitiful, so Kaito decided to guide him a little. Zabuza, which ninja sword do you want to use most in the future? Of course, the executioner's blade. Sure enough. This guy has been going astray since he was so young. Why would you want to use the executioner's blade? You are not even as tall as the sword, so it must be inconvenient to wield it. Zabuza was somewhat accustomed to being teased by Kaito, so he just rolled his eyes at the other party, as if he was too lazy to answer such an idiotic question. Thinking about this guy's future height, Kaito had to persuade him from a different angle. You know all the characteristics of the 7 ninja swords, right? Of course, I know. So what are you good at? Although Zabuza was a little annoyed by Kaito's question, he still answered the question seriously. Kenjutsu and water-style ninjutsu. Kaito looked at the other party with a dark face, looking completely ignorant. If the future adult Zabuza said that he was good at water-style jutsu, it would be fine. But now he only mastered one offensive ninjutsu, the water dragon jutsu with 44 seals. How dare he say that he is good at water-style jutsu? Your fighting style is more inclined towards assassination, right? Hidden mist jutsu and silent killing technique. Yes. Zabuza did not refute but nodded in agreement. But you can see that the executioner's blade is obviously of a bold and open style. Not to mention that the huge blade makes it difficult to move in secret, even the loud sound of breaking wind caused by swinging it in the hidden mist jutsu is enough to make the opponent alert before being attacked. And think about it, if you swing that door-like sword, the wind it creates might even blow away some of the mist. After hearing Kaito's description, Zabuza was stunned and even stopped moving forward. I just think that Biwa Juzo is a bit weaker, so it should be easier to take over the position of the ninja swordsman from him. And the bloodthirsty style of repairing the executioner's blade will suit me better. Upon seeing this, Kaito immediately increased his strength to guide. Then have you ever thought that Biwa Juzo might be weak because his executioner's blade is too weak? What about the executioner's blade that can be repaired by blood-sucking? Have you ever seen any other ninja sword that breaks into 2 pieces easily? After being asked this question, Zabuza could no longer hold back. In his mind, he imagined himself fighting with the enemy, and then his executioner's blade was easily cut into 2 pieces by the opponent. Then he held the sword handle and crawled to kill other small fry, recovered the executioner's blade, and turned back to fight the enemy. At this moment, Zabuza seemed as if his worldview had collapsed. Then which ninja sword should I choose? Finally, the key question was asked, and Kaito couldn't help but smile. Of course, long blade, Nuabari. Sewing needle. Chapter 40, Getting on the boat and going to sea. Long blade, Nuabari. That's right. You see, not only does the needle make no sound when it attacks because of its blade structure, but it also has built-in steel wire that can be used to set traps in the mist. It can be said that it is a perfect match for your silent killing technique. Mirukawa Kaito tried hard to persuade Zabuza in his ear, and gradually Zabuza himself became a little shaken. But the kenjutsu I learned is mainly about chopping, and I don't know how to use wire skills. From what you said, has anyone learned the unique attack methods of the 7 ninja swords in advance? Even the executioner's blade is completely different from the swordsmanship you are using now. As he spoke, Kaito also glanced at the 50 to 60 centimeter short sword that Zabuza was currently using. Besides, you can't become one of the 7 ninja swordsmen and use long blade, Nuabari right now. Fighting skills can be practiced. These skills are nothing. Fighting style is the most difficult to change. So, my style is, using wire. Seeing that Zabuza was still hesitant, Kaito directly put his arms around his neck and quickly caught up with the 3 people in front. Don't worry, I'll give you some steel wire for combat later. You can practice with it first. It's always good to have more skills. Although Zabuza was still a little confused, he felt that what Kaito said made sense, so he had to write this matter down and concentrate on his journey. Since they were bringing an ordinary person, Shimatsuki Ichiro, with them this time, they did not travel very fast. It took them more than 2 days of stopping and walking before they arrived at a port city in the west of the Land of Water. Because it is a port city close to the Land of Fire, it has a strong business atmosphere. The hustle and bustle of traffic and people coming and going is very different from the somewhat depressing atmosphere of the Kirigakure village. However, among the few people, Ao and Terumi Mei were not on an overseas mission for the first time, and they were no longer surprised by such scenes. As a transmitted person, Kaito would never think that this city, which had just been initially electrified, was so grand. Only Momochi Zabuza, a ninja of commoner origin, had basically never left the Kirigakure village. At this moment, he felt shocked, and everything he saw was new to him. Fortunately, this guy has a heavy idol image, and his face was wrapped in bandages so his expression was invisible, so he didn't make any jokes. After all, they had a mission to accomplish, so they did not stay in the city for long. They went straight to the port to take a boat to the Takumi village. So big. As soon as Zabuza entered the port, he was shocked by the huge passenger ship in front of him. At this moment, Kaito didn't have the time to complain about Zabuza's unfamiliarity with things. Instead, he looked back at the city made up of a mixture of stone and wood that the group had just walked through. Mirukawa Kaito couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Sure enough, the contrast between the brick, stone, and wood house and this huge steel ship is a bit too strong. This passenger ship, which is dozens of meters long and painted in blue and white, can carry about 400 to 500 passengers. It does not feel like a product of this era at all. The tourists boarding the ship nearby were not curious at all. A large number of passengers boarded the ship in an orderly manner with their luggage. Even after getting on the boat, Kaito couldn't help but gently touch the metal railing of the ship. Ao clapped his hands, signaling the 3 students to focus their attention. Okay, it will take another 4 days to reach Takumi village. During the voyage, the 3 of you will take turns following Mr. Shimatsuki and ensure his safety. So what about you, Ao-sensei? I will naturally participate in protection when necessary. The 3 of them didn't expect that Ao, who was always rigorous in his work, seemed to be wanting to be lazy at this time, but they had no choice but to obey orders. Fortunately, Shimatsuki Ichiro was generous enough to book a single suite for everyone, which somewhat alleviated the unhappiness of several people. Otherwise, considering the commission level for C-rank tasks, everyone might have to squeeze into a 4-person room. 4 days. If we run on the water, we can get there in a day and a half. So you're planning to run across the sea with Mr. Shimatsuki on your back. And you want to run without taking a break the whole time. When Mei heard Zabuza's nonsensical words, she rolled her eyes and retorted. Okay, you 2 can take a look around the boat first. I'll be in charge of protecting Mr. Shimatsuki. After saying this, Kaito turned and looked at Shimatsuki Ichiro. The old man just nodded and didn't think there was anything wrong with only one child protecting him. After all, this mission was not actually dangerous for him, but the store manager insisted on arranging the mission and designated this team to provide protection. As an old man older than the people of the Kirigakure village, he had no intention of knowing what was going on behind this kind of thing. After Mei and the other person left, Kaito just stood on the deck with Shimatsuki Ichiro, quietly looking at the sea. Maybe he felt a little bored after looking at the sea for too long, so Shimatsuki Ichiro turned around and looked at Kaito, who was teasing Blue, and found a random topic to chat about. Boy, you really have a unique summoning beast. I have never seen a summoning beast like this before. Upon hearing this, Kaito stopped what he was doing, but did not give a direct answer. Mr. Shimatsuki, have you seen many summoning beasts? Of course. I was there when the Kirigakure village was first established. I have seen all the ninjas and summoned beasts in the village, big and small. He feels like Shimatsuki Ichiro is bragging, but he has no evidence. Aren't you a specialist in making ninja tools? And you know so much about summoning beasts. You are ignorant, boy. Many summoned beasts also need weapons. Just like your frog, he can definitely use a short sword. Speaking of summoning beasts' short swords, the first thing that came to Kaito's mind was Gamabunta's more than 10-meter-long short sword. That thing couldn't have been made by humans, right? Haha, that's not necessary. Blue's current attack methods are still good enough. Kaito laughed it off and tried to fool him. Actually, when Blue's level increases, he will learn some slashing skills. However, Kaito guessed that this kind of skill should be accompanied by the technique of condensing chakra into blades, so there is no need to equip him with another weapon. Even if he doesn't have any, it won't be too late to prepare weapons after he has learned the relevant skills. Now the main means of attack for him and Blue is still based on long-range output. TSK, you ignorant brat. Seeing that the business was not going well, old man Shimatsuki Ichiro seemed a little unhappy. However, Kaito thought that maybe he could really wear a short sword. It was not for attacking or anything, but it might mislead the enemy and make them think that he was a melee ninja, which would be somewhat useful. However, there is no need to find a master to make such a purely decorative weapon. He doesn't have the money. As long as it's easy to wear and doesn't affect his movement, and the quality isn't too bad, and when he really needs to take it out to use it occasionally, don't let it break directly like Kakashi did with the white fang blade, it'll be fine. Just when Kaito was thinking about whether he should ask Zabuza where he bought his short sword, there was a commotion on the other side of the deck. Chapter 41 Encounter. Hey, kid. You bumped into someone, and you didn't even give an apology. It's obviously you. The noise of the commotion on the other side was getting louder and louder, but Mirukawa Kaito did not immediately go over to join in the fun. Instead, he turned to look at old man Shimatsuki Ichiro. Who would have thought that the old man, at such an old age, would still be so eager to join in the fun? He didn't even notice Kaito's inquiring gaze and was already preparing to walk to the other side of the deck to take a closer look. Seeing this, Kaito had no choice but to hurry up and catch up. Although his anticipation didn't show any movement, he was still on an escort mission after all, so it was better not to make any mistakes. However, when Kaito approached and saw the two people arguing, he was shocked. There is nothing much to say about the ordinary-looking young man. Judging from his attire, he should be just an ordinary genin from the Kirigakure village. The two people in the same attire who are staring at him from behind should be his teammates. The focus was on the 10-year-old boy on the weaker side. Kaito's eyes were involuntarily fixed on him. He had messy black short hair, wore a dark blue ninja suit, and had two bulging ninja tool bags on his waist, which made him look ordinary. But the Konoha forehead protector on his head, the Uchiha clan emblem on his back, and the somewhat ridiculous windproof goggles on his face all revealed his identity. Uchiha Obito. Why is he here? Kaito was shocked, but before he could think about it, several members of the Kirigakure were ready to attack Uchiha Obito. Seeing that the brat was still arrogant, the leading genin swung his fist and hit Uchiha Obito in the face. Shwa. Just when the Kirigakure genin's fist was only a few centimeters away from hitting Uchiha Obito's eyepiece, a silver-haired figure suddenly appeared between the two of them and firmly grasped his fist that was about to fall. The genin pulled his hand out several times but failed. Kakashi. You don't have to do anything. I was just about to take care of him. Uchiha Obito, who was clearly stunned by the other party's direct attack, shamelessly refused when he saw Kakashi helping him. When the two teammates of the genin saw that their companion was restrained by a little devil, they immediately stepped forward to help and were even ready to take out their weapons to fight back. But at the same time, a handsome young man with blonde hair suddenly appeared beside the two men with a smile on his face and shook their hands, which had just taken out their weapons. It's just a small misunderstanding. It shouldn't be to the extent that we need to use weapons, right? At this moment, the three genin from the Kirigakure village had their backs soaked with cold sweat. Just seeing that the other party was able to control the three of them so easily, it would be easy for them to take their lives. But due to the concern of face, he couldn't open his mouth to soften his words, so he could only say weird things like, "This is in the territory of the land of water," and "Don't underestimate the blood mist ninja." Seeing that the other party had no intention of continuing the conflict, the blonde young man naturally let go of his hands. Okay, Kakashi. Let him go. It's just a little misunderstanding. Yes, Minato-sensei. The three people who were released by the other party felt that they had lost face. They didn't say another word, but quickly left the deck and returned to the cabin. Kaito estimated that the few people would not leave the cabin for the next few days. Seeing that there was nothing exciting to watch, the people around also dispersed one by one. Kaito looked at the brown-haired girl who came over and was scolding Uchiha Obito, and her heart was not as calm as it seemed. Namikaze Minato, Hataki Kakashi, Uchiha Obito, Nohara Rin. How could the famous Team Minato be on the flight from the land of water to the Takumi village at this time? At this moment, Kaito's brain was working rapidly. At present, Uchiha Obito and Nohara Rin should have just graduated from the Ninja Academy. Kakashi is still only a chunin, and Team Minato was established not long ago. Although Konohagakure village has already gone to war with Sunagakure village, it was only a small-scale conflict in the early stages of the war. Iwagakure village is just taking the opportunity to denounce Konohagakure village, and it is hard to say whether troops will be sent to the land of Earth. Namikaze Minato's real reputation as the Yellow Flash was basically earned during the Third Great Ninja War. Although his strength may be very strong at this time, his position in Konoha should be just a young and capable senior ninja, not an indispensable force on the battlefield. That's why he was able to take his 3 students out to perform some ordinary tasks to train new people. Kaito breathed a sigh of relief after sorting out his thoughts. There's no way. None of these people are easy to deal with. Even if they are familiar characters from the original novel, it's still a little scary when they suddenly appear in front of you. Just now, Kaito even thought about whether he should take advantage of the fact that Uchiha Obito is still the last one in the group to kill him. After all, when he awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan in the future, he caused great trouble to the entire Kirigakure village. Using illusions to control the 4th Mizukage, intensifying the blood mist policy, and slaughtering the bloodline clans, it can be said that the Kirigakure village has been brought to the point where it has become the shame of the 5 great ninja villages. Fortunately, Kaito still has some rationality, and it is hard to say what will happen in the future. If he dared to attack Uchiha Obito now, he guessed even Ao-sensei may not be able to protect him. Hey, kid, let's go. Seeing that there was no more excitement, Kaito was still staring blankly, and Shimatsuki Ichiro had to pat him with his hand to remind him. Oh, okay, Shimatsuki-san. Kaito withdrew his gaze in time, but when he was about to leave, he found that Namikaze Minato seemed to be glancing at him vaguely. Kaito almost couldn't hold back his expression. Fortunately, nothing happened in the end, and Minato's team left the deck in a noisy manner. Little boy, you seem to be worried. Nothing much, it's just that those guys were very strong. Of course Kaito couldn't tell the truth, so he had to make up an excuse. Haha, the blonde one is okay, but the black-haired one is so irritable and won't amount to anything in the future. As an old man, I have a pretty good eye for people. Haha, yeah. Kaito smiled awkwardly, but did not refute anything. As for you, kid, I feel that you will definitely have a bright future. Would you like to consider letting me make you a ninja sword? I guarantee that your strength will improve by leaps and bounds. Free. Upon hearing Kaito's answer, Shimatsuki Ichiro's eyes immediately widened with a look of disbelief. How is that possible? Do you know how valuable a famous sword is? Shimatsuki-san, have you ever made any famous swords? Seeing that Kaito actually questioned his forging skills, Old Man Shimatsuki became even more angry and immediately opened his mouth to refute. What do you know? A famous sword can only be famous in the hands of an expert. It's not that the sword I made is not good, but those guys are too weak and let my sword down. Kaito looked at the old man who was a little too excited and thought. Just now you said that you have always been very good at judging people. However, considering that the other party is his client after all, it would be bad if he was not harmed by the enemy but instead suffered internal injuries from his own anger. He shut up decisively to signal that he admitted defeat. Seeing that the kid was so tactless in rejecting him again, Shimatsuki Ichiro no longer tried to promote his forging business. Chapter 42 Takumi Village. On this unchanging sea, 4 days passed in a flash. Apart from a minor incident on the first day on board, nothing noteworthy happened afterwards. During this period, Mirukawa Kaito met the 4 members of the team Minato several times. However, although the Land of Water and the Land of Fire have not yet gone to war, they are after all ninjas from 2 different ninja villages and there is no communication between them. However, because Old Man Shimatsuki often needs company and protection recently, his relationship with Kaito has become more and more familiar. I don't know whether he is really optimistic about the future of Kaito, or because Zabuza clearly wants to become one of the 7 ninja swordsmen and has no interest in the old man. In short, Shimatsuki Ichiro never gave up promoting his ninja sword customization service to Kaito. In the end, Kaito could only helplessly say that he would consider it when he had money in the future. We're finally here. As soon as she got off the boat, Terumi Mei stretched her body. She must have been too pent up on the boat for the past few days. Zabuza on the side didn't say anything but nodded in agreement. Kaito looked around but did not see any members of Team Minato. He didn't know whether they had already disembarked or had not come out of the cabin. The untimely prompt from the system interrupted Kaito's looking around. Ding! You have visited the new country for the first time and unlocked the achievement, I'm here. I'll see you. The system's achievements are becoming more and more arrogant. Ao-sensei, shall we go directly to the Takumi village? Terumi Mei asked Ao with a hint of meaning. Well, let's go over there now, is that okay? Shimatsuki-san. Seeing that Ao had made the decision, he pretended to ask old man Shimatsuki Ichiro. Kaito secretly rolled his eyes in his heart. It's okay. You can arrange the itinerary. I will stay in the Takumi village for a while in the name of exchange and learning. It seems that Karatachi Yagura had indeed informed Shimatsuki Ichiro in advance. Such cooperation does not seem like that of a client who paid the money. However, it did make the investigation a lot easier for everyone. Exchange and learning. So your craftsmanship is really not as good as the craftsmen in the Takumi village, old man. You little brat, communicate. Do you know what communication means? Zabuza's words were enough to break Shimatsuki Ichiro's defense, and he wanted to pick up a hammer and hit him twice. However, the group did not chat for long. Perhaps it was because this pier was designed to facilitate trade in the Takumi village and the distance was not too far. They arrived at the Takumi village in just a few steps. Takumi village should have a lot of trade, right? Why would they place the village in the mountains? The Takumi village has a very ancient history and it has been here for a long time. Before the great ninja villages were established, this was just a gathering place for artisans. At that time, the transactions were mostly small-scale sales of fine weapons, so there were no requirements for the surrounding environment. Several people walked into the Takumi village while talking. Maybe because the war was approaching, the weapons were selling well. At this moment, the Takumi village seemed very lively, and merchants dressed in various costumes were everywhere on the street. The group first found an inn to stay in, and then went straight to the Takumi village office building in the center of the village. As Kaito had just stepped into the building, he saw a group of people coming out towards him, and his pupils suddenly shrank. It was none other than Namikaze Minato and his 3 students. Although their destination was likely the Takumi village, they did not expect to meet here again by such a coincidence. Minato-sensei, the letter has been delivered. Can we stay in the Takumi village for 2 days before returning? Obito, shut up. Kakashi, you. This time, Kaito deliberately did not keep his eyes on the other person for too long. He just listened to the 2 people's fight and followed the others into the building. Ao noticed that Kaito's expression was unusual and asked. That Konoha team came to the Takumi village on the same ship as us, right? Kaito obviously hadn't come to his senses yet and just nodded subconsciously. The blonde man in the lead should be Konoha's Jonin Namikaze Minato, who is said to be very powerful. The white-haired boy is also reported in intelligence. He is the son of Konoha's White Fang, a genius who became a chunin at the age of 6. He is called Hatake Kakashi. Ao told about them to his students casually. All this information was recorded in the ninja notes. Of course Kaito knew what his captain said a long time ago, but he didn't understand why Ao said it at this time. Ao-sensei, who is stronger, Namikaze Minato or you? Ao didn't care about Zabuza asking this question, he just pondered for a moment. It's not clear right now, but I was not a jonin at his age. Minato is not even 20 years old yet, 5 or 6 years younger than Ao, and Ao only became a jonin 2 years ago. I wonder if Minato has mastered the Flying Thunder God Jutsu now. If he has, it is probably not a question of strength difference, but a question of how many seconds Ao-sensei can hold on. Kaito thought silently in his heart. Tisk, it's better if his mission doesn't conflict with ours, otherwise, humph. Zabuza, who had not suffered any severe beatings at this moment, was obviously not clear about his own strength. Then you'd better not hope for it. The village is still in a wait-and-see state. If we get involved in the war between the land of wind and fire ahead of time, how do you think the village will deal with you? The other side. Minato-sensei, that guy with the frog-summoning beast just now seemed to have been keeping an eye on us from the ship. Kakashi pulled up his mask and spoke quietly to Minato. It should just be a coincidence. Try not to cause any conflict. After saying that, Minato put his hand on Kakashi's white hair and rubbed it. Hey, Minato-sensei, Kakashi, why aren't you leaving? Uchiha Obito turned around in confusion, looked at the 2 people who suddenly stopped, and asked. Kaito and his companions entered the office building. According to what Ao had said to his students before, they thought they would have a direct communication with the leader of the Takumi village. Unexpectedly, they were led by the staff to an ordinary office on the 2nd floor. Before entering the door, Kaito quietly pulled Shimatsuki Ichiro's sleeve and asked in a low voice. Old man, you should have come here to trade before, right? Didn't the leader of the Takumi village show up? How is that possible? Even though it's not an official transaction, it's still a large ninja tool shop in the village. How dare the Takumi village underestimate the 5 great nations? Kaito entered the office with doubts, and saw a middle-aged woman with green hair standing up to greet everyone. I'm very sorry, everyone from the Kirigakure village. The leader has been unwell these days and is unable to receive guests. I'm the person in charge of the current foreign trade of the Takumi village, Kujaku. It's nice to meet you all. Seeing the other party's sincere attitude, everyone naturally didn't say much. They just gave the right to speak to Shimatsuki Ichiro and stood aside to act as security personnel. Fortunately, we were only discussing the trading intention of new orders and it didn't last very long. But even so, the few people waiting on the side were getting a little bored, and Zabuza even started yawning. Kaito initially listened attentively to what the two were talking about, but later he found that there was nothing useful, so he just became dazed. After Kujaku and Shimatsuki Ichiro stood up and left, the group just performed their protection mission diligently. According to Ao's plan, they would conduct secret investigations in the first few days. If there were no results, they would go and forcefully test the situation. Therefore, everyone was not in a hurry for the secret mission. However, they didn't expect that after they returned to the hotel, Shimatsuki Ichiro called them to stop. That Kujaku, there's something wrong with the quotation list she gave me. Chapter 43 4 Celestial Symbols Men. What's wrong with the list? At first, they did not understand what Shimatsuki Ichiro meant when he said there was a problem with the quotation list. They just looked at each other with some confusion. Shimatsuki Ichiro did not keep the audience in suspense and took out a stack of documents to start explaining. More than half of the items on this list are priced much lower than normal prices, and it also states that these weapons are from 4 Celestial Symbols Men. If you want to cooperate, you need to pay a deposit first. The situation in the ninja world is so tense recently, but the price of weapons has dropped. Ao noticed the irregularity immediately. That's right. Moreover, orders for standard weapons like ours are all arranged by the Takumi village, and we directly contact the chief of the Takumi village. Only when there are occasional retail orders that require customized weapons will we specifically look for more famous masters to make them. After all, most of the funds need to be handed over to the daimyo of the Takumi village. If the transactions are not unified, it will lead to confusion in the accounts. Everyone understands this point, and the fundamental reason is that the model of the Takumi village is different from that of other countries. For example, the 5 great ninja villages are provided by the 5 great ninja countries, and the daimyo provide funds and tasks to maintain the daily operation of the ninja villages. The situation in the Takumi village is completely the opposite. The Takumi village has basically no combat power, but is able to earn a lot of money. The daimyo maintains the overall peace in the Takumi village through his personal connections with other daimyo and diplomatic means. And they have never asked to pay the deposit in person before, added Shimatsuki Ichiro. There is no deposit for large-scale transactions. Before, we settled the money on the spot. Otherwise, with the strength of the Takumi village, if any craftsman really regretted it, they would have to return the deposit even if they had collected it. After hearing what Shimatsuki Ichiro said, Kaito and the others looked at each other in surprise. But what's even more surprising is that the investigation hasn't even begun yet. Could it be that the truth has come to light so easily? Shimatsuki Ichiro also noticed the expressions of the others and continued speaking. I know your mission this time is definitely not just to escort me, so I told you about the problem I found. Whether it helps you or not, the follow-up is your business and has nothing to do with me. After saying that, Shimatsuki Ichiro ignored everyone's reactions, put down the pile of documents, and walked back to his room at a leisurely pace. It seems that things are simpler than we thought. Terumi may seem to be in a good mood. She put her hands behind her head, sat casually on the edge of the bed and crossed her legs. It shouldn't be that simple, right? They are being too blatant. It's basically like smuggling under the guise of the village leader. Although it is rare, Momochi Zabuza, who is always a reckless man, also suggested that everyone act with caution at this time. However, Ao was a jonin who had performed many overseas missions. He knew that in a small ninja village like this, although everything seemed to be running normally, there would always be some funny and bizarre behaviors from time to time. Finally, Ao turned to look at Kaito, who was thinking about something, and asked, "Kaito, have you thought of anything?" Kaito had of course thought of some things, but they were all plots from the original work, so he was still thinking about how to explain them to the team members. The Takumi village also appeared in the original work. There was a small organization called the Four Celestial Symbols Men who attempted to capture the one-tailed Jinchuriki Gaara and use the Jinchuriki's chakra to revive their ancestor Saimai, hoping to rule the ninja world with it. As a result, the ancestor was successfully resurrected, but was finally taken down by the injured Gaara with a single shot of one-tailed beast Shikaku. He was one of those common and funny villains who couldn't recognize the form of the ninja world. If it had not happened that the Sunagakure village was tricked by Orochimaru for participating in Konoha's collapse plan and was beaten up by Kanagakure village, and was at its weakest, it would have been unknown whether these people could escape from the land of wind alive. However, Kaito vaguely remembered that in the original work, these people should have just prepared the conditions for resurrecting their ancestors before they thought of capturing Gaara as a battery. Now, there are still more than 10 years before the plot takes place, so even though he knew that this trip was to the Takumi village to carry out a mission, he had never considered the matter of the Four Celestial Symbols Men. However, the suspected smuggling place is now called Four Celestial Symbols Men, which forces Kaito to associate it with the future Four Celestial Symbols Men. Kaito organized his thoughts a little and looked at Ao and the other two. "I think the other party is really smuggling openly under the nose of the chief of the Takumi village. Based on the overall strength of the Takumi village that we know, as long as a ninja with some level appears, he can basically suppress the entire Takumi village." This statement is not without basis. In the original novel, when the Four Celestial Symbols Men were about to cause trouble, the entire village of the Takumi village was so scared that they all ran away and even abandoned the village. Now it's just that the leader has been sidelined, which can only be regarded as a small witch compared to a big witch. That's a possibility. It's still early now. Let's go around the village and get some information. We'll make a decision on the details in the evening. Zabuza, you stay in the inn and protect Shimatsuki-san's safety. Considering Zabuza's personality, Ao left him alone, and the others went out to the streets to investigate. Although he said he was asking around for information, the Takumi village was a small place, and Kaito only observed and recorded the terrain, then found a few stores and used his age advantage to ask the store clerks for some information. Although no useful information was obtained in the end, a lot of strange and bizarre ninja tools were seen. One of the shops even has ninja tools that are said to be imitations of the gunbai, a weapon passed down from generation to generation in the Uchiha clan. Of course, this replica does not have the ability to rebound all ninjutsu, but it can use wind ninjutsu chakra to rebound fire ninjutsu. However, this gunbai is not only beautiful in effect, but also very affordable. Even the money in Kaito's pocket may only be enough to pay for it once. Besides, the Uchiha clan is still the largest clan in Konoha, and they dare not show off such imitation products to them as they did Kaito in the market. Finally, unable to resist the enthusiastic sales pitch of the store clerk, Kaito gritted his teeth and paid for a roll of steel wire ninja tools despite the clerk's disdainful gaze, intending to give it to Zabuza for training later. As night gradually fell, the three of them returned to the inn where they were staying temporarily and called Zabuza to share information. Although Kaito didn't find out any useful information this time, Ao and Mei made some discoveries. In addition to the most basic exploration of the terrain near Four Celestial Symbols Men, the two also learned some other information from the villagers. First of all, the workshop of Four Celestial Symbols Men should have existed in the Takumi village for a long time. It is said that it was a well-known workshop in Takumi village during the Warring States period, but it gradually declined. It has only developed rapidly in the past 2 years, but they haven't heard of any great figures coming out of it. Secondly, from their conversations with certain store owners, it can be seen that the two seem to be aware of the changes in the way ninja tools were traded, but they all chose to conceal it. Finally, there is the current leader of the Takumi village. Because he is an excellent forging master, he has a high prestige in the village. That's all. Zabuza was listening to the information carefully, but he saw that the other three people suddenly stopped talking. So this entire village is completely unaware that their leader has been sidelined. Chapter 44 Eavesdropping. Are the people of the Takumi village so stupid? Zabuza, who hadn't gone out all afternoon, was a little confused by the result. Indeed, it can be seen that most people are telling the truth. Some are just complaining that the leader is old and in poor health and needs to recuperate frequently, which has led to a significant decrease in the village's orders. Mirukawa Kaito couldn't help but laugh out loud. With the war looming, orders are decreasing. Kaito shook his head speechlessly. Although the Takumi village had not experienced a war for a long time. But every time a ninja war broke out, the great powers would take turns to put pressure on them because of the supply of orders. How could these villagers still be so simple? Stupid. Perhaps some people are indeed involved in smuggling, but such transactions do not go through the village or the daimyo. Even if the selling price is lower, they may earn more, so they will naturally not make the matter public. But this kind of thing will definitely be noticed by the daimyo, right? And it's easy to offend the 5 great ninja countries. If they are retaliated against in the end, the unlucky ones will be the Takumi village itself. Terumi couldn't understand this behavior at all. This is what we are going to investigate. For now, our focus should be on the 4-symbol square. Ao coughed lightly and made arrangements for his team members. Tonight's operation will be divided into 3 teams. Mei will stay here to protect Shimatsuki-san. Kaito and Zabuza, the 2 of you will disguise yourself and go to the area around the 4 Celestial Symbols Men workshop to investigate the situation. There is no need to investigate too deeply. If something goes wrong, retreat in time. I will sneak into the residence of the chief of the Takumi village to investigate and then meet up with you. Remember, we have plenty of time. Now that we have a clear investigation target, don't rush. All actions must be conducted in a concealed and safe manner. Yes, X3. Thick dark clouds blocked the moonlight, and the sea breeze made the bamboo forest outside the village rustle. This is a perfect night for a secret activity. Just after coming out of the inn a few minutes ago, Ao performed a hidden misjutsu that was enough to cover the entire Takumi village. At this moment, Kaito was sincerely grateful for the geographical location of the Takumi village. It was close to the port, in the middle of a dense forest, and most importantly, small enough that even a thick mist covering the entire village would not alert anyone. On the quiet street, Kaito and Zabuza quietly approached the edge of the village. Zabuza had spent the afternoon in the inn protecting Shimatsuki Ichiro and was not familiar with the terrain, so it was Kaito who led the way the whole time. Although he did not delve into the silent killing technique like Zabuza, as a Kirigakure ninja, Kaito still had the ability to distinguish things in the mist. The 2 of them easily climbed onto a roof and were about to move on when anticipation suddenly gave a warning. However, the warning was very weak, so Kaito was not overly nervous. He just made a gesture to signal Zabuza to stop moving forward. Although Zabuza was a little confused, he immediately bent down and hid. Sure enough, the next second a figure appeared at the corner of the alley. If the 2 of them had continued to move forward, they would have most likely collided head-on with this person. Before Kaito could even begin to appreciate the convenience of anticipation, his attention was drawn to the person who walked out of the shadows. The 2 of them looked at each other in surprise. They didn't expect it to be such a coincidence. The figure was the Kujaku who claimed to be the person in charge of foreign trade of the Takumi village in the afternoon. Moreover, the direction the other party was heading happened to be the 4 Celestial Symbols Men workshop where the 2 were planning to investigate. Nodding slightly to Zabuza, the 2 decided to give up the idea of observing the terrain first and decided to follow directly to see what the woman's purpose was in going to 4 Celestial Symbols Men workshop in the middle of the night. Kaito looked around vigilantly. Since 4 Celestial Symbols Men workshop was located in a remote area, there were very few houses nearby. In order to avoid being discovered by following too closely, Kaito waited until Kujaku walked a little further away before patting Blue on the shoulder and whispering, "Blue, follow her from the roof." After receiving the order, the little frog immediately jumped lightly to the top of a house in front and hung silently behind the colorful bird. Kaito and Zabuza followed Blue carefully. The little frog was only about 30 centimeters in size, so it would be less likely for the other party to notice them. After a while, the 2 of them followed all the way to the 4 Celestial Symbols Men workshop. When he saw Blue stop on a roof, Kaito knew that Kujaku must have entered the workshop. After meeting up with Blue, they immediately saw the workshop yard below. A very thin young man walked into the room while talking to Kujaku. After a brief hesitation, the 2 decided to take the risk and get closer to investigate the situation inside the workshop. Then they quietly moved to the window where the light was still on, and sure enough, they heard the voices of a man and a woman talking in the room. Really? The ninjas from Konohagakure village today probably didn't come here because of the matter of the Takumi and smuggling. I've already read the letter they sent. It's just that the Land of Fire nobles invited a few old guys to appraise antiques. Still, we need to be careful. At this point, Kajaku's voice became a little excited. The craftsman is showing up less and less now, so why not just go ahead and do it? All right. There's no need to mention this anymore. We still need him to maintain the relationship with the daimyo, and we also need his help to study the remaining blueprints in order to revive our ancestors. I'm just afraid that he will continue to study and will find out something. It doesn't matter, he's old now. Kaito outside the window didn't expect it to be such a coincidence, and what he heard was quite exciting. It has been confirmed that it was most likely the 4 celestial symbols men who wanted to resurrect their ancestors, but it was unexpected that the skinny young man took the dominant position among the two. From what he said, it seemed that all the weapons to revive Saimai had not yet been fully produced. It is still unclear how many accomplices the 4 celestial symbols men have besides the 2 people in the house. For some reason, there was no movement in the room after the skinny young man said his last sentence. Kaito and Zabuza looked at each other and wondered whether they should retreat first and investigate the situation around the workshop. They had already exceeded the mission target today. Who would have thought that when Zabuza saw the look in Kaito's eyes, he suddenly pulled out the short sword from his back and was about to get up and climb into the house through the window. Fortunately, Kaito was quick-witted and grabbed Zabuza and pulled him back. But the two of them are right next to the window, at such a close distance, how could the people in the house not notice the movement? Who? The man in the house asked in a very calm voice, but Kaito, who had already received the anticipation reminder, certainly would not stand there stupidly. He picked up Blue with one hand and forcibly pulled Zabuza, who was trying to turn back, with the other hand. He burst chakra with both feet and jumped directly onto the wall. Run. Chapter 45 Determining the Goal. Run. After Zabuza jumped onto the wall with Kaito, he subconsciously turned around to look at the place where the two had just hidden. Just then, he saw 3 strangely shaped ninja tools flying out of the window. The 3 ninja tools landed on 3 points at the same time with great precision, and surrounded the position where the 2 people were just now in a triangular formation. The next moment, a violent explosion mixed with heat waves surged towards the center of the triangle. Zabuza could even imagine that if Kaito had not led him to dodge, both of them might have been seriously injured now. What was even more incredible was that this explosion, which was obviously quite powerful, did not leak out a single bit of energy. The fire, sound and even the shock wave of the explosion were all firmly confined within the triangle. Even the grass next to it was only slightly yellowed by the heat and was not destroyed by the explosion. Kaito, who also turned around and saw this scene, said subconsciously with disbelief in his eyes. Oh my gosh! What an explosion! Although the explosion was controlled within a fixed range for some unknown reason, Kaito still broke out in a cold sweat when he saw the ground that was blown beyond recognition. There was no time to think, the anticipation alarm had not ended yet. Kaito grabbed Zabuza tightly and jumped off the wall again, running out of the workshop. Just as the 2 men left the wall, the tall and thin man flashed out of the window holding a black sword. He swung the sword vigorously with one hand, and hot flames gushed out from the tip of the sword, like a burning fire dragon rushing into the sky, leaving behind only suffocating air after being burned wherever it passed. Looking at the courtyard wall that was burnt directly after being attacked by the fire dragon, the 2 of them stopped hesitating and quickly ran into the mist and left. The tall and thin young man did not continue to chase. He just stood in the yard of the workshop, looking at the wall that was burned by his attack, thoughtfully. It was not until then that Kajaku walked out of the house holding a pair of swords. Hoki, you're not going to chase them anymore. That's unnecessary. The other party only has 2 children. I'm worried that they are bait. Kajaku thought about it and didn't dwell on this question, so she asked instead. 2 children. Did you see their appearance clearly? No, I only saw the backs of 2 kids around 10 years old, but one of them had white hair and was carrying a short sword. That's right, since Ao reminded the 2 to disguise themselves before they set off, Mirukawa Kaito, a guy with a head full of tricks, directly instigated Zabuza, and the 2 of them used transformation jutsu to become Ataki Kakashi and Uchiha Obito respectively. When Kajaku heard Hoki talking about the white-haired short sword, Her pupils suddenly shrank and she spoke in a gloomy tone. Could it be those ninjas from Konohagakure village? I remember there was a kid with white hair and a short sword on his back. It's possible that the so-called antique appraisal in their letter is just a cover. Hoki thought about how the two of them were just talking about the letter from Team Minato and how he was almost fooled, and a hint of viciousness flashed in his eyes. We have to find a chance to get rid of them. Konohagakure village is in the middle of a war right now, and no one will pay attention to them. Unfortunately, the conditions for reviving Ancestor Saimai have not yet been gathered, otherwise this might be a good time to declare war on the despicable 5 great ninja countries. At this point the mission had been completed. Considering that this was the first time he took his students abroad, Minato planned to stay a few more days to let his students broaden their horizons. However, he did not know that an inexplicable blame had been put on them. And there are 2 ignorant frogs in the well who are looking for opportunities to kill them. Of course, even if he knew, Minato would not care too much about this mysteriously confident person. On the other side, after running for a while, Kaito saw that there was no enemy catching up and gradually slowed down. Kaito stopped and grabbed Zabuza, who was about to jump to the next roof. Okay, no need to take a detour, no one is following us. Zabuza, who was now out of combat, had time to use his brain. Thinking of how Kaito had pulled him out of the enemy's attack range twice in advance, he couldn't help but feel a little grateful. However, remembering the eye contact at the window before, he looked at his teammate strangely again. Why did you do that just now? Being asked this question so suddenly by Zabuza, Kaito was a little slow to react. When did I say I was going to take action? There was no sound in the house before. Didn't you signal us with your eyes to go in and catch those 2 people? It was not until then that Kaito figured out why this guy who was preparing to retreat suddenly drew out his short sword. That's a look I gave to retreat. Would someone turn away when they give a look to arrest someone? Now Zabuza was speechless. Hey, maybe we should use tactical gestures next time. Besides, there are only 2 people on the other side, so there is no need for us to retreat. Just when Kaito was about to explain, a voice interrupted their friendly discussion. What are you doing? In the dark night shrouded in mist, a voice suddenly appeared in the deserted alley, scaring the 2 men to instantly draw their weapons and take a defensive stance. Even Blue instantly pulled a piece of bubbles from his neck and prepared to attack. However, after seeing who was coming, they both breathed a sigh of relief. Ao-sensei, you're going to scare people to death. I saw what seemed to be a fire over at 4 Celestial Symbols men, so I rushed over. It seems that it was you who caused the noise. Kaito was about to ask Ao how he found them, but before he opened his mouth, he remembered that as a perception-type Jonin, it would be easy for Ao to find them in such a small village. Seeing that neither of them spoke, Ao didn't waste any time and spoke directly. Let's go back to the hotel first. There's no need for me to investigate anymore. Kaito and Zabuza looked at each other and didn't ask any more questions. They gathered chakra in their feet and followed Ao's steps. After returning to the hotel, Kaito told Ao and Mei everything that happened to them that night. It is now basically certain that the people leading the smuggling are 4 Celestial Symbols men, and the leader of the Takumi village should be under their control. After listening to Kaito's story, Ao was not surprised. He just nodded and continued. It doesn't matter. It's enough to identify who the smugglers are. The next step is to find out who is trading with them in the land of water. The internal struggle of the Takumi village has nothing to do with us. We just need to report to the village after we return. Kaito thought about it and felt that what Ao said was right, but he felt that under the current circumstances, they might not be able to avoid the turmoil in the Takumi village. Today, Kaito and Zabuza have already alarmed the other party. Will this make them alert? Terumi Mei said with some concern. Kaito said that their appearance has not been seen, so the problem is not big. We just need the account books, letters or order information to confirm which clan is trading with them. After all, the person who issued this mission is Jonin Yagura. Kaito agreed with what Ao said. The Land of Water could be involved in the Third Ninja World War at any time. If they made a big fuss while carrying out such a private mission abroad, they would not have a good time when they returned to the village. Ao-sensei, did you find out anything when you went to their leader's house? Although the smuggler had been identified, Zabuza still asked Ao casually. But there was a strange expression on Ao's face. There is no one in the home of the chief of the Takumi village. Chapter 46 Coincidence. The leader of the Takumi village was kidnapped by the people of the Four Celestial Symbols Men workshop and taken to another place. This was the first possibility that Kaito thought of, but after hearing this, Ao's expression became a little weirder. No, his house was very clean. There was only a letter left on the table to a man named Hoki. He said he knew his purpose and would not get involved. He took his wife and children to visit friends in Daimyo Prefecture. This. The three little ones looked at each other. Kaito finally understood why Ao had such a strange expression. The leader of this Takumi village might have run away with his family, and even left everyone in the village behind and ran away alone. All right. Ao raised his voice slightly to attract the attention of the three people again, and continued speaking. The matter of the Takumi village has nothing to do with us. We just need to find evidence of smuggling. Ao-sensei, how about we sneak in again tonight and find the evidence directly? This. When asked by Zabuza, Ao's face turned slightly red with embarrassment. Seeing this, Kaito quickly pulled Zabuza. Given the alert state of the Four Celestial Symbols Men after being eavesdropped, Kaito estimated that it would be no problem for Ao to break in directly. However, sneaking in to steal was a bit difficult for these guys in the Naruto world who were called ninjas but were actually mages. Besides, although the location of Four Celestial Symbols Men workshop is remote, it is still within the Takumi village, so it is not advisable for the few of them to make too much noise. Ao didn't explain much, just looked at the sky which was already getting brighter. The other party has been alerted tonight, so it's not easy to sneak in. Tomorrow during the day, May and I will pay a visit in the name of doing business, while you and Zabuza will find an opportunity to sneak into the workshop from other directions. Understood, X2. The three of them looked at Kaito who didn't say anything. What I want to say is, then we are just going to ignore Shimatsuki-san. Protecting him is our mission, right? Don't worry, since this is a door-to-door transaction, Shimatsuki-san will naturally come with me. Well, this is the confidence of the great ninja village Jonin in his own strength. Even a young Jonin like Ao doesn't think anyone in the Takumi village can beat him in a head-on confrontation. It is naturally safest to keep the target of protection close to you. Now that the plan had been finalized, everyone went back to their rooms to rest. Considering that it would be a bit inconvenient to go to the door to trade so early in the morning, the few of them did not get much rest last night. It was not until almost noon that Ao called Shimatsuki Ichiro to go out to Four Celestial Symbols Men workshop together. Seeing Ao bringing Terumi Mei and Shimatsuki Ichiro to visit, Kaito and Zabuza quietly went around to the back door of the workshop courtyard. But before the two of them got close, they saw the middle-aged woman named Kujaka sneaking out from behind carrying a strange box that looked like a mummy's coffin. This sudden situation caught the two of them off guard. Zabuza was too lazy to think and just looked at Kaito, waiting for him to make a decision. After a moment of hesitation, Kaito still felt that he needed to follow and take a look, so he quickly wrote a note and handed it to Blue, asking it to go to the main gate to find a chance to inform Ao-sensei. He and Zabuza then quietly followed Kujaku. Looking at Kujaku in front of him carrying a box and walking into the forest, Kaito felt relieved. The other party came to such a remote place alone. If we can find an opportunity to capture her quietly, wouldn't it be more convenient than looking for some account book? Soon the two of them who had been following her saw that they were far enough away from the Takumi village and were about to attack her directly, but then they saw Kujaka stopped in front of a building. Even though it is so far away from the Takumi village, there is a strange building that looks like a temple and also a bit like an altar. Hoki, I have caught him. As Kujaka finished speaking, the thin young man from last night actually walked out of this strange building. Are we still going up? Zabuza, who was squatting on a tree, was eager to ask Kaito, but even though he was asking, Zabuza had already slowly drawn the short sword from behind. Kaito was a little hesitant. Although the Four Celestial Symbols Men were somewhat funny and weak villains in the original novel, he and Zabuza are not very strong now. If there was only one person, it would be no problem to take it down by surprise. But now it's 2 against 2, so he is a little unsure. He doesn't know whether he should wait for Ao to come before taking action. While Kaito was hesitating, Kujaku had already untied the box behind her and pulled out a black-haired boy who was in a coma from the box. Looking at the slightly silly windproof glasses on the black-haired boy's face, who else could it be but Uchiha Obito? How did this guy get caught here? The sudden situation left the two people in the dark a little confused. The two of them had previously thought that the Konohagakure team had already left the Takumi village, and their team also had a senior ninja like Minato Namikaze, so how could they be captured here? They naturally didn't know that because of the incident last night, Hoki and Kajaku suspected that it was the Minato team who were secretly investigating them. What's even more coincidental is that Namikaze Minato had been planning to take advantage of the mission to complete and accompany his students to the less dangerous Takumi village to broaden their horizons, but he was suddenly summoned by the Hokage and used the Flying Thunder God Jutsu to quickly return to Konohagakure village. Of the three people who stayed behind, Uchiha Obito was unhappy with Kakashi being the temporary team captain, so he ran out to wander around alone. He was caught by Kajaku, who wanted to find out the information about Team Minato. While Kaito was still sorting out his thoughts, a new development occurred below. A brilliant white blade light cut through the air and slashed towards the arm of Kajaku that was holding Uchiha Obito with incredible swiftness. However, Hoki, who was standing opposite Kajaku, discovered the attack first. He drew out the black sword behind him and swung his hand to cut out a ray of flame to force back the attacker. The person who came was naturally Hatake Kakashi, who had discovered that his stupid teammate was missing and came to rescue him. After Kakashi stood still, he held the short sword in his backhand and looked warily at the two people wearing the forehead protectors of the Takumi village, and spoke slowly. "Ninja from the Takumi village, why did you kidnap my companions?" "Oh, another little devil." Hoki obviously did not answer Kakashi's question. He just flashed forward and prepared to take down the opponent. In an instant, the two of them started fighting. Kaito and Zabuza in the dark looked at each other in bewilderment. They did not expect the plot to develop in such an unexpected way. When he saw that the kidnapped person was Uchiha Obito, Kaito was still thinking that it would be nice if this guy, who would bring disaster to the Kirigakure village and even the entire ninja world in the future, could die here. However, when he thinks about it, everything Uchiha Obito did was ultimately guided by Uchiha Madara. Even if Uchiha Obito is gone, there will still be Uchiha Madara, but this cannot solve the fundamental problem. Instead, it will make oneself lose foresight. So when he saw Kakashi rushing out, Kaito also decided to take action decisively. "Zabuza, get ready. Don't worry about Konoha's guys, we just need to capture one alive." After saying this, he didn't care about Zabuza, who was already grinning, and he just bit his finger and formed seals with both hands to summon Blue. The tracking lasted for such a long time, long enough for Blue to deliver the note to Ao. And seeing Blue being taken away by the summoning, Ao must have guessed that a battle had taken place on their side. The Jonin support will be here soon, there is no need to hesitate anymore. Chapter 47, Troublesome Enemies. As always, he started with a Shuriken attack, covering Zabuza's surprise attack. However, perhaps because she had just been ambushed by Kakashi, Kajaku was very alert at this moment. Although Kaito and Zabuza were extremely careful in their sneak attack, she still managed to dodge it miserably. Casually throwing the still unconscious Uchiha Obito aside, Kajaku took out her two swords with a wary look on her face and looked at the two of them. The two people who suddenly appeared here did not interrupt the battle between Hoki and Kakashi, but just made them more vigilant while fighting. Kajaku glanced coldly at the Kiri head guards of Mirukawa Kaito and Momochi Zabuza. "Ninjas from Kirigakure village? Why are you here to save the brats from Konohagakure village?" Zabuza, who had already identified the opponent as his target, completely ignored the opponent's questions, quickly formed hand seals and performed the water clone jutsu, and attacked forward again. At the same time, Kaito also cooperated with Blue to use the water gun enhanced shotgun satellite shuriken style. The water flow wrapped around the high-speed rotating shuriken and shot rapidly towards Kajaku. Seeing that the two little devils ignored her words and continued to attack, Kajaku became even more angry. "Go to hell, little devil." Whirlwind. Kajaku roared and swung the two swords crossed in front of her chest at the same time, and two streams of air flew out at high speed on the swords. The airflow seemed ordinary at first, but it quickly expanded and became violent after leaving the sword. In an instant, the howling whirlwinds rushed towards Kaito and Zabuza like two angry dragons. Water guns, shurikens, clones, all attacks in the whirlwind's path were dispersed by the powerful whirlwind. Seeing this, the two of them quickly dodged, trying to avoid being swallowed by the whirlwind. However, the whirlwind was too fast, and the two of them had to protect their chests with their arms, and were thrown into the air by the whirlwind. Zabuza was lucky. After being blown away for a distance, the wind gradually weakened. He struggled to regain his balance in the air and landed safely. Kaito saw that he could not avoid the incoming tornado, so he hugged Blue and protected him in his arms. Then he was caught up in the strong wind and, like a kite with a broken string, crashed heavily into the thick tree trunk behind him. The severe pain in his arms and back prevented Kaito from fainting. He raised his hand to wipe the blood oozing from the corner of his mouth. However, he didn't expect that his right hand was cut by a strong wind or by a shuriken that was blown back. There was even more blood at the corner of his mouth because of this cut, which made him look somewhat hideous. Kaito felt a little scared. If his luck was worse and the shuriken was blown away and hit his vitals directly, he might directly trigger the anti-instant death effect of the focus sash, and fall into a coma due to serious injuries. He didn't expect the opponent's attack to be so strong, but for this extra who is not even a small boss, Kaito really can't remember how these guys in the original work were defeated by the opponent. Kaito endured the pain and gave a wink to Zabuza in the distance. Regardless of whether Zabuza understood it or not, he rolled over and hid behind a big tree. Kujaku, who had blown two people away with one blow, did not continue to pursue after seeing her victory. Instead, she lightly clasped her two swords into one, stood in place and began to mock with a look of disdain on her face. Ninja. A ninja without excellent ninja tools is nothing. My weaknessless soaring short swords can control the strong wind with almost no consumption. Your attacks are nothing compared to this ninja tool. Zabuza, who had received a signal from Kaito, was already hiding behind a huge rock. When he heard Kujaku's ridicule, he was ready to attack again. As soon as Zabuza showed his head, two high-speed wind blades brushed past his cheeks. After the wind blade flew past Zabuza, it continued to cut through a large area of bamboo forest without stopping and whizzed away. Zabuza had no choice but to retreat behind the boulder again. Kaito ignored Kujaku's words, endured the pain, formed seals with his hands and released the aqua ring to heal his wounds. Blue, who had been silent on the side, showed a hint of determination in his eyes when he saw his master being hurt so much in order to protect him. Without waiting for Kaito to finish the treatment, Blue's short figure turned into a beam of blue light and used quick attack, with all his strength to rush towards the place where Kujaku was standing. Pa. 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 Continuous trampling sounds rang out in the dense forest. After long-term training, Blue had already adapted to using obstacles to increase his speed in this complex terrain. Kaito, who realized that Blue had rushed out after hearing the sound, stood up in a hurry. Before he could take a step, he saw that Blue had almost rushed to Kujaku. Another gust of wind blew out, blowing Blue, who was about to rush to the enemy, back again. Fortunately, Blue was small in size and weight, so he was not hurt. Kaito jumped to catch Blue and quickly hid himself. Kujaku seemed a little angry and embarrassed because she was almost successfully ambushed. She waved her hands continuously, and countless wind blades and whirlwinds swept across the entire bamboo forest. A large number of bamboo trees were chopped off and swept away, clearing a large open space in just a moment. During this period, Kaito and Zabuza also made many attempts. However, if you get close, you will be blown away, and if you attack from a distance, the wind will disperse you. Even if you want to attack from blind spots at the same time, you will fail repeatedly because the opponent only needs to turn around and attack back. Even though Kaito didn't hesitate to use up his chakra to perform the charged water shuriken in a waterless environment, the giant whirlwind released by the opponent's 3 consecutive swings changed the attack direction and it failed to hit the target. Not only were their attacks ineffective, but they also had to be careful of high-speed wind blade attacks, which can easily leave a deep wound on their bodies that can be seen to the bone. Seeing that such powerful attacks were released frequently, it seemed that the opponent really had no consumption at all, so Kaito had to call Blue to reunite with Zabuza again. Fortunately, at this moment the two of them have roughly figured out the opponent's attack range. Although they can't attack the enemy, they are not afraid of being chased by the opposite side. In a place like the Takumi village, there is actually such a strong person. Zabuza looked hatefully at Kujaku, who was on guard in the distance, and said with gritted teeth, "Kaito at least has several long-range means, and Blue's small size and high speed also make the enemy dare not be careless." And he himself was suppressed in all aspects. The hidden mist jutsu itself was somewhat restrained by this kind of powerful wind style. The water dragon jutsu consumed too much chakra in a waterless environment, and it was not necessarily better than Kaito's water shuriken, and as for kenjutsu he was completely unable to get close, so it was useless. It's really frustrating. There's more than one person. While Kaito was treating Zabuza's wounds, he curled his lips and motioned him to look to the other side. From time to time, pillars of fire flew out from there into the sky, and it was obvious that Kakashi Hataki's opponent was not easy to deal with. It was just that because they were wary of each other, both sides were intentionally or unintentionally keeping a distance between the battlefields, so the specific situation of the battle over there could no longer be seen at this time. I didn't expect that the ninjas from the Takumi village could be so strong with the help of ninja tools. Hearing Zabuza's complaint, Kaito chuckled. Now you know how rubbish the executioner's blade is, right? Seeing that even in this situation, Kaito still had the mood to tease him, Zabuza suddenly felt a little annoyed. Then can the long blade, Nuabari, be any better? When asked this by Zabuza, Kaito instead revealed a somewhat strange smile on his face. I thought of a way that I could give it a try. Chapter 48 Evolution. The treatment did not take long. Mirukawa Kaito and Momochi Zabuza each held a kunai and rushed out from the left and right sides again. Blue, who stayed where he was, thrust a shuriken into a tree stump that was cut off by the wind blade. At first, when Kajaku saw the two little devils running around her, she thought they were just being unwilling to give up and were planning to attack her from her blind spot. Kajaku symbolically waved her swords a few times, but Kaito and the others kept a sufficient distance at all times and did not get close. There was plenty of time to dodge the wind blades, and the whirlwind turned into a gentle breeze when it blew on the two of them. To put it bluntly, Kajaku's strength was only forcibly increased by the weaknessless soaring short swords, and she had no other means of attack. It was wishful thinking for her to chase the two with her own speed. She could only stand there and look at Kaito warily. Kaito and the others continued to accelerate, moving in circles at high speed in the distance but did not launch any attacks. It was not until the two of them crossed each other's paths for the last time that the three of them stood in a straight line again. Useless little devil, none of your attacks can break through the blockade of the wind. Kajaku looked at the two little devils on her left and right, feeling slightly uneasy, but still managed to speak. TSK, you ignorant fellow. Kaito found it somewhat funny to hear such arrogant remarks, which meant that he and Zabuza were just restrained by each other. Otherwise, he doesn't need too much strength. If he can use earth-style jutsu or lightning-style jutsu, he can easily deal with this person who relies on external forces. He doesn't believe that her strong wind can blow away earthquakes and lightning. Does she really think her wind is Shinra Tensei? Kaito no longer paid attention to his opponent's cowardly appearance, held the kunai in his mouth, and quickly formed seals with his hands. Water style, aqua jet. A large amount of torrent surged out from under his feet. Kaito held the kunai, as if he wanted to attack at close range, and accelerated towards the enemy. Relying on the high speed brought by the aqua jet and the recent training, Kaito flexibly dodged the incoming wind blades. For attacks that he could not avoid, he used the kunai in his hand to forcibly block them through the reminder of anticipation. At the same time, Zabuza on the other side also accelerated forward, and the two of them attacked the enemy from both sides. Seeing the two getting closer, Kajaku once again gave up the idea of using the wind blade to kill the two little devils. She swung her both swords vigorously. It's no use. Whirlwind. A violent whirlwind was once again generated from Kajaku's double swords, and blew quickly towards the two people who were rushing towards them with kunai in their hands. Seeing that the pincer attack had failed again, Kaito did not feel upset at all, but instead a smile appeared on his face. Without trying to avoid this large-scale whirlwind attack, Kaito immediately released the aqua jet under his feet to release the buffer spikes, and put his arms in front of his body to meet the impact of the strong wind. But he held the kunai tightly in his hand and did not let go. At. Just as Kaito and the other person were blown away by the whirlwind, a sharp and rapid friction sound came from where Blue was standing. The shuriken stuck in the wooden stake trembled violently, and finally, with a dull bang, the shuriken broke away from the wooden stake and flew towards the position of Kajaku at an extremely fast speed. However, Kaito's preparation was naturally not for this shuriken. A cold light flashed, and then Kajaku finally saw clearly that the shuriken was connected by a thin steel wire. The two ends of the steel wire were tied to the kunai in the hands of the two people. As the two were blown away by the strong wind, the steel wire was tightening towards her at an extremely fast speed. It's too late to dodge now. Ah! A shrill scream came out of Kajaku's mouth. Kaito rolled over and landed steadily on the ground, looking at the screaming Kajaku. Unexpectedly, at the last moment, the opponent inserted both swords into the ground and placed them at her side, thereby reducing some of the cutting damage from the steel wire. However, even so, the high-speed contracting tough steel wire still cut through the pair of swords and became deeply embedded in Kajaku's leg bones before getting stuck. Kajaku fell to the ground in pain and struggled helplessly, with a large amount of blood gushing out from the wound. It is conceivable that if there was no cushioning of the long sword, Kajaku's legs would have been cut off by the sharp steel wire at this moment. Looking at Kajaku falling to the ground and screaming in the distance, Kaito let out a long breath and prepared to go forward to stop the bleeding and treat her. It's good that she's not dead. It's just enough to keep her alive to ask for information. However, the moment this sentence came out of his mouth, Kaito himself was stunned. It was obviously a very bloody scene, but the first thing he thought of was to complete the mission. Haha, I'm really becoming more and more like a ninja. Kaito shook his head, throwing these useless emotions out of his brain. Just as Kaito was recovering from his somewhat dazed mood, alarm bells started ringing in his mind. Careful! Zabuza in the distance roared, quickly drew out his short sword and ran towards Kaito. However, due to the previous strong wind, the two were already too far apart, and Zabuza's full-scale sprint could not bring him any help. Kaito looked back following the warning in his mind. A surging heat wave hit him in the face, and the dazzling flames filled his entire vision. At this moment, Kaito had only one thought in his mind: fortunately the focus sash had never been triggered, so he should not die. On the other side, Blue, who also saw his master in danger, immediately activated Quick Attack and rushed over here quickly. Although his speed was much faster than Zabuza, he still couldn't reach Kaito in time. Blue thought about how Kaito had crashed into a tree and spit out blood in order to protect himself, and that he was not fast enough to attack Kajaku before she could react. Now he still can't protect his master because of his speed. The strong unwillingness turned into anger and strength, and Blue's sprint speed became faster and faster. Pa. Along with the sound of footsteps moving forward, the blue light on the little frog's body seemed to be flickering to the beat. At this moment, time seems to stand still. Drip, da, drip, da, drip, da, drip, beep. There seemed to be some strange sound in Kaito's ears. The next moment, time returned to normal. Blue left a long afterimage in the air and appeared in front of Kaito as if he had teleported. The slender blue figure, holding high a huge azure water ball, blasted it towards the scorching flame pillar without hesitation. Water pulse. A large amount of white steam sizzled out from where the water ball and the flame collided. However, under such an impact, the water ball did not shrink, but grew larger. The raging flames seemed to be frightened and scattered in all directions, unable to shake the water ball at all. Looking at the figure standing in front of him, the color of the back became darker, and the figure became taller and thinner. Kaito felt his vision was a little blurry. Blue evolved. Chapter 49. Author thought about the book. Translator. This is the first time I write a novel. After saying so much nonsense, I'd better talk about my book. This story has been on my mind for a long time. I used to often write down any ideas that came to my mind in the memo on my phone. Now I have 7 or 8 stories in my head, and some of them are ideas that I haven't seen anyone write about yet. But before, I just wrote it down for my own amusement. Now that it's my turn to write a book, I decided to bring out this Naruto fan story out of caution. When I first read this book, I thought the Pokémon Greninja was too ninja-like and it would be a shame not to put it in the Naruto world. I also thought that the skills in the Pokémon were also very suitable to be transformed into ninjutsu. When I first started writing the book, I was discussing the plot with my friend, and he advised me not to give the protagonist a summoned beast. With a quack, people would mistakenly think it was a summoning story, which might divert readers. It's hard to write too much with a summoned beast, and you'll be criticized if you write too little. But in the end, I still felt that Greninja was the starting point of this book, so I forced myself to keep it. As a result, when the book was first published, after 5 days of review, no editor signed it. After another 5 days of cross-review, still no editor signed it. At that time, I had already published a book with 50,000 words, and I felt so disappointed. I felt that I was not suitable for writing novels. Was there something wrong with what I had written before? Should I just get a summoning beast if I couldn't listen to advice? At that time, I once thought about throwing away all the manuscripts I had and stopping writing. Fortunately, the editor Aohu finally pulled it out for me on the last day of cross-review, thus saving the book. After that, new books were put into the library. In the first few days, there were only dozens of collections every day, but I was still very happy. What I liked most was chatting with book lovers in the chapter descriptions and book reviews. Later, the number increased to hundreds every day, and I began to like checking the data in the backend every few hours. Hey, don't laugh at me, new authors just have no self-control. Until today, when I suddenly received the notification that the product would be put on the shelves, I am still a little confused. I am a reasonable person. When discussing this book with my friends, I was scolded several times. Why do you care if it is reasonable or not? Who cares if it is consistent with the original? Readers want excitement. If you can't write excitement, no one will read it. Actually, what he said makes sense. He is also an old bookworm who has been reading for more than 10 years. P.S. You know I am talking about you, right? I don't mean to criticize you. But there are some plots that I myself feel are unreasonable, and I really can't continue writing them. Although I am tired from writing the book, I am actually very happy to write it. For example, when Zabuza takes the graduation exam, when he fights the pirate captain, and when he fights Kaik. I really enjoyed myself when I was writing these plots. But after writing it, I was afraid that I was just being self-indulgent, and I was also afraid that I had missed something and the meaning was not expressed clearly. In short, it was quite contradictory. Then there is the issue of IQ. I have been reading novels for so many years, and I am not young anymore. I can no longer bear to see plots where everyone's IQ decreases. But I've also heard a saying that the upper limit of a character's IQ in a novel is the upper limit of the author's IQ. Well, how should I put it? I'm not a smart person, but I don't want the character to be too stupid. So the character I finally set for the protagonist was not a person with high IQ, but someone who is very quick-witted at critical moments. Since the character's IQ ceiling cannot be raised, the protagonist must think of a solution within a few seconds in critical moments. As the author, I can spend several hours behind the scenes helping the protagonist think of the optimal solution. Doesn't that make the protagonist appear smarter? What's the point of saying so much? I write books very slowly. The author is just like his pen name, a jack of all trades. I don't have many manuscripts saved, and the key is that I sit in front of the computer almost all day every day, but I can't produce many words. After it's on the shelves, I can only update as much as possible, so I'll throw out the saved drafts in the first 2 days. I will try my best to post as many as possible in the future. Well, how about it? I think this is a good suggestion. Okay, after saying so much nonsense, I still want to thank all the readers. Thank you for your comments and suggestions, thank you for reading my book, thank you for subscribing to this book in the future, and thank you for your rewards and monthly tickets. Thanks to the editor Aohu for saving this book, thanks to the author in the group for helping to solve the problem, and thanks to the fruit boss in the group for sending. Okay. Chapter 50. The battle is over. As the long dragon of fire in front of him gradually dissipated. After coming to his senses, Mirukawa Kaito, who was on high alert, saw that the enemy was not continuing to attack. Ao, who had arrived at some point, was seen casually stepping on the back of the thin man named Hoki. The other party lay on the ground very peacefully, without moving or resisting at all. The scene was very harmonious. Of course, if you can ignore the spiderweb-like cracks and collapse on the ground, as well as the white bubbles coming out of Hoki's mouth, the scene would be more harmonious. As if sensing something, Kaito turned around and saw Terumi Mei, who had also appeared behind him without him noticing. She shrugged her nose and retracted the water formation wall that seals had been made but not released. Seeing that his sensei had arrived, Kaito no longer had to worry about safety issues. He decisively picked up Blue, who had just blocked the attack for him, and examined him carefully. Quack. After checking his body, he found that he did not have any burns caused by the steam just now, and it seemed that because he had just evolved, the whole frog seemed very excited. After evolving from Froki to Frogadier, Blue not only grew in height from over 30 centimeters to over 60 centimeters, but his body also became more slender and taller. Compared to his previous small, dumpling-like body, his limbs are now much more stretched and flexible. At the same time, the dark blue line that was previously only between the eyebrows also spread to the entire face and back, changing from a light blue little frog to a dark and light blue. Kaito held Blue and looked at him over and over for a while before touching his little head with a smile. Blue is more handsome than before. Quack, Omega. Zabuza, who had just run over at this time, was relieved to see that Kaito was not injured. However, Mei looked at Blue in Kaito's arms with some surprise and marveled at him. How did Blue grow so big in an instant? Is this some kind of ninjutsu? While speaking, Mei reached out her hand to touch Blue, who was very different from before. Pa. Kaito slapped away the hand that Mei extended and said with some disgust. I'm surprised by what I've seen. The toads in Mount Myaboku can grow from thumb-sized tadpoles to giant toads as tall as a mountain. It grew up little by little. How can it grow big in an instant? Ao, who was tying up Hoki alone, spoke helplessly when he saw these three students completely ignoring him. Kaito, aren't you going to treat that Kujaku? If we wait any longer, she'll probably die from excessive blood loss. Kaito then remembered that he wanted to go and treat Kujaku just now, but was interrupted by the sneak attack from that guy named Hoki, and he had forgotten about it. Looking at Blue in his arms, he felt that it didn't seem appropriate to put him on his shoulders given his current size. He simply put the little frog at his feet and ran to Kujaku that was still lying there, no longer having the strength to scream. After giving her a simple bandage and confirming that she would not die immediately, Kaito patted his butt and stood up. Ding! You have treated 50 patients cumulatively and have unlocked the achievement, Iron Stick Hospital, stab the director. This. Kaito, who had been able to ignore the system achievement prompt sound, put down his hand that was patting the dust in embarrassment. But then Kaito relaxed again. After all, only he could see the nonsense about his achievement. As long as he didn't show embarrassment, no one would notice the problem. What's more, this time it was a pleasant surprise. This patient treatment is a continuous achievement. Previously, the A dare to treat, a dare to believe. For treating one patient and, in turn doctor, join us. For treating 10 patients have been unlocked. He thought the next achievement would only be unlocked after treating 100 patients, but he didn't expect to trigger this achievement again today. It made Kaito feel like he had made a good deal. Hey! What are you grinning about? Hearing the voice, Kaito turned around and saw Ao-sensei, who was carrying Hoki, and Zabuza, who were tied up like dumplings, and Mei, who was looking at him with some disgust, walking towards them. It's just a treatment, why are you smiling so happily? Kaito didn't want to pay any attention to Mei, who was looking very unhappy, and directly changed the subject to ask Ao-sensei. Ao-sensei, you should have arrived a long time ago, right? It's been a while, not too early. Ao turned his head slightly, and his lips almost hit Hoki, who was unconscious on his shoulder. He quickly threw the Hoki on the ground and Ao clapped his hands in disgust. Ao was actually feeling a little guilty. After he found out that Blue had been taken away by the summoning, he immediately realized that a battle had taken place here and quickly rushed over. However, seeing that his two students were not in any danger, Ao just hid aside and watched the battle. He also stopped Mei, who was about to use the Earth-style, double suicide decapitation jutsu, to go underground and help the two of them take down their opponent. Finally, after seeing his student defeat the opponent with great difficulty, he was about to step forward to give some pointers, but he almost caused his student to get injured. He really felt that he had lost face as a senior ninja. However, Kaito asked Ao when he arrived, not because he wanted to blame him for not taking action, but because he was more concerned about the outcome of the battle on the other side. Then Ao-sensei, since Hoki has come over here, where are the other two ninjas from Konohagakure village? Kaito asked this question not because he was worried about the safety of Uchiha Obito and Hitaki Kakashi. After all, even if they were popular supporting characters in the original work, they were now enemy ninjas to him. Kaito can still distinguish between fantasy and reality. However, if something happened to these two people, Kaito would need to anticipate future changes. They should have run far away. That white fan kid is quite skilled. At such a young age, he He was able to use the shadow clone jutsu and trick this guy. The real body went straight to rescue the Uchiha kid. As Ao said this, he kicked Hoki, who was lying on the ground, with some disgust. This guy almost hurt his student and just now caused him to almost lose his first kiss. He was really hateful. Why didn't Ao-sensei just kill those two Konohagakure guys? Zabuza looked at Ao with confusion, who seemed to be in a bad mood, and asked casually. After all, the village has not yet gone to war with Konohagakure village, so there is no need to create unnecessary trouble. Besides, there are only 2 people on the other side, and their Jonin-sensei who led the team never showed up. We just need to ensure that our mission is completed normally. In fact, there was one thing Ao didn't say. One of the 2 little brats was the son of White Fang, and the other was a young man from the Uchiha clan. If there was no clear mission, Ao didn't want to cause such trouble for no reason. Isn't Ao-sensei a perception ninja? Why didn't you find any trace of the Jonin named Namikaze Minato? Ao looked at Zabuza strangely, wondering why he was so determined to kill those 2 Konohagakure ninjas. At this time, Mei, who had been following Ao, began to explain. It's because Ao-sensei can't sense him, that's why he can't do anything.